If you like our channel, please subscribe and make sure to click on the bell icon, so that you won't miss any future audiobooks we'll upload for free each week on YouTube.
A True Lady by Hanna Hamilton. Chapter 1. Lord Louis Bennett scanned his eyes critically over the ballroom, examining the work that the servants had spent the last week doing to create a magical evening for him. They knew that this night was extraordinarily important to him. He couldn't have been clearer when he told them to put this party together. And that was because he was about to make the most vital decision of his whole life. He was going to pick his wife. At 24 years old he was ready. He probably should have done it sooner, but he had always been so busy helping his father out with the management of the estate. As his parents' only child, it would be up to him to take over when his father passed away. And he wanted to be able to make him proud when the time came. That reason alone was why he'd thrown himself so much into it. However, it was time for things to change. Now he felt like he understood all that he needed to when it came to the financial upkeep of the family estate. Now he wanted to ensure that his personal life was where he wanted it to be too. He wanted a wife. And soon enough he wanted to be a father too. The dream of having a family of his own had been growing for a long time, and now he couldn't wait to make it a reality. The architecturally beautiful archways of the grand hall in his home rose high above everyone's heads. The best paintings that his father owned hung from the walls. And the flickering flames of the candles around the room gave the whole place a very magical feel. Yes, Louis was pleased. His staff had done a very good job. He nodded to himself and smiled before taking another sip of his drink. It was time to do what he came here for. Then his eyes moved over the guests that had come to share this monumental evening with him. It was hardly surprising that there were a lot of young, beautiful women, dressed in their finest ball gowns, staring right back at him. Louis knew that he would have his pick of the best. That was not him being arrogant, although even he could not deny that he had brooding good looks. His dark eyes and even darker hair, plus his height and broad shoulders, made him a very attractive prospect. But not as much as his family's money. All the finest ladies in London wanted him because they knew that he could offer them the best kind of life. And after all, wasn't that what everyone wanted? This was a difficult time. There were many people really struggling to get by in the world. But that was a completely different universe to the one Louis and his companions lived in. They had everything they could ever want. Yes, they had to work hard to obtain and maintain that. But they had no idea of the struggles that the lower classes went through. And they hoped that they never would. One of the attendees at the ball was different though. She understood the pains and struggles of the lower classes very well. She lived it every single day. This was the only day of her life where she had pretended to be anything other than what she really was. And Clara wasn't totally sure that she felt comfortable. The expensive silk blue dress swamped her tiny frame. The makeup felt strange on her porcelain skin. And the jewels decorating her light blonde hair felt heavy and awkward. Clara wasn't sure that this was such a good idea after all. Just think of the money, she told herself firmly. Think of the life you will be able to lead after all of this. Clara sucked in a deep breath of air and she forced the fake smile back onto her face. All she needed to do was get Lord Louis Bennett's attention. She needed to make him really see her. Once he saw her, and hopefully, he would like what she was pretending to be. Then she needed to make him fall for her. Or maybe not fall for her. She just needed to be caught in a compromising position with him before she revealed who she really was to ruin his reputation. It was all very petty, Clara did not fully understand it. But Lord John Irving insisted that it was necessary. When Lord Irving first spoke to Clara, it was at the opera. As a courtesan, she was often taken to events such as that with her clients. That night she was with a drippy young man. Clara could barely remember his name now. Only his wealth when Lord Irving made contact with her. He took her to one side and asked for her assistance. Of course, he could tell what she was at first sight. However, as much as she usually tried to look like a proper lady, she couldn't afford to do it fully. It wasn't like tonight when the whole look was funded for her. Because of that, Clara first assumed that the help he required would be something more bedroom-related. But she was wrong. Lord Irving told her that he had a proposition for her, and that if she took up the offer she would be a wealthy woman for the rest of her days. He insisted that she would never have to work again. What woman wouldn't be attracted to that? Especially one in her position who hadn't ever had anything. Clara was not born in London, she grew up in the countryside on the farm with her father. She never got to know her mother because she, unfortunately, died in childbirth, which always left a hole in her life that could never be filled. She might not have known any different, but Clara always knew that there was something missing. Because of that, Clara lived a lonely childhood. She spent so much time working on the farm that she didn't really get to know anyone else. So by the time her father passed away from a virus that consumed him rapidly, Clara was lost. Her life felt utterly meaningless. Then she found out that the farm was in debt. Her father owed money that she could not even begin to afford, so she could not keep her home anymore. Without any sort of plan in mind, Clara ran away to London hoping that she would find something better. Of course, she didn't. She fell into the life that she was currently living, one where all she had to offer the world was her body. The idea of escaping it was almost too desirable for her. That was when Lord Irving told her about the Louis, and his awful treatment of his daughter when he rejected the idea of marrying her. He did not give her any specifics, but he insisted that he needed to seek revenge for that. He wanted her to seduce him, to ruin him in front of the polite society of London. She wanted to ask more, of course. She did, but if Lord Irving did not want to share the information, that was his decision. If there was one thing Clara knew about men, it was that they liked to keep their secrets. Clara did not like the plan, to begin with. It sounded far too shady for her liking. She did not much care for her job, but she also wasn't keen to delve into territory unknown. At first, she refused, but the amount of money that was on offer was too much for anyone to turn down. She ended up agreeing because her mind was filled with dreams about what her future could be. Now, however much she didn't like the plan, she had to go through with it. It was all that she needed. The image she had of herself living a very comfortable life, thank you very much, had to become a reality. He is rather good looking, the posh-looking girl next to her commented. With her long dark hair twisted up on the top of her head, her lilac-colored dress, she was a picture of true grace. Clara wanted to emanate that, but she was not sure that she had managed to pull it off. I definitely would like him to be my husband and not just for his money. As the girl turned to smile at Clara, her heart stopped dead in her chest. This was the first person to pay her any real attention at all, and she had a horrible feeling that her cover was about to be blown. Obviously, she was not much liked by wealthy women in her line of work. They looked down on her when they saw her out in public, and Clara braced herself for that look once more. But somehow it never came. Yes. Clara coughed awkwardly. He is rather good looking. I do not think I was expecting him to be so handsome. The girl turned back to Louis, and Clara did the same. As she stared at him, she realized just how much he meant her words. Louis was a truly good-looking man. With his dark, slightly messy hair and his deep chocolatey eyes. With his muscular, broad chest, and his strong jawline. He was attractive enough to cause a flutter in the pit of Clara's stomach. Not that she was here for a flutter. Clara shook it off rapidly, and she did her best to think only of the money. If she wanted to actually get that fat payment from Lord Irving, she could not continue to stand in among the other girls, dreaming about how handsome her victim was. She needed to be noticed. She would have to stop being a wallflower and get him to see her. Clara was used to gaining the attention of men, but as herself, she was not sure that she could do it as a lady. But she needed to try, or all of this would be worthless. "Excuse me." She pushed past the girl who had been speaking to her, and she made her way nearer to Louis. She had no intention of approaching him. Of all the things she did not know, she was aware that would be looked down on. But she needed to be more within his eye line. Eventually, Clara found a spot with no one in it that was very close to where Louis was currently talking to a svelte, pretty-looking young thing. She had a nice enough appearance, but Clara could already tell that she was a good girl. A boring girl who did not know how to break the rules at all. The sort of wife that would send her future husband into the arms of someone like Clara. A crass courtesan who could keep a man entertained. Clara had to really force herself not to roll her eyes as she waited. She felt terribly impatient. She wanted desperately to get her meeting with Louis over and done with before she gave herself time to change her mind. The idea of going to tell Lord Irving that she failed was not a nice one. He was a formidable man who evidently did not mind playing dirty games. Clara didn't want to find herself on the receiving end of such a ploy. Clara felt her spirits sink as she spotted Lord Bennett grab hold of the young woman's hand as he led her towards the dance floor. Lord Irving had informed her that he would have to dance with everyone. So this was to be expected, but it still crushed her just a little bit. That was until his eyes were drawn to hers as if there was a magnet between them and he really looked at her. Clara's heart literally skipped a beat as she felt a connection, pulling her towards him. Lord Bennett appeared shocked as if he was feeling it too. Time stopped. She wondered if something monumental was about to happen. But then the lady on his arm pulled him away from Clara and the moment was broken. Chapter 2. After that brief moment of eye contact, Clara expected Louis to come to her next for a dance. She brushed her dress down, checked her hair, felt like it was still fixed in place, and waited patiently. She even managed to feel a genuine moment of calm as she watched him dance with another woman. It hardly mattered. He would be by her side soon enough. But he wasn't. Straight away he went to another woman on the other side of the room. And he brought her onto the dance floor to spend some time with him instead. It left Clara gobsmacked. She did not know what to make of his behavior. Did she imagine him looking at her? Did she make up the buzzing sensation she felt inside? She thought that she knew men well. But maybe she was not as clued up as she thought she was. Or maybe Lord Bennett was different. But then he looked at her again. This time with a smile in his eyes. And Clara understood what was happening. He was toying with her. Playing a game. The fact that she did not know what the aim of the game was thrilled her no end. Clara liked being on her toes. It was an exciting sensation that she was not used to at all. She found that most men lacked the imagination to keep a girl like her interested. So this was wonderful. So she continued to wait. And wait. And wait. Lord Bennett danced with lots of women from the room. He seemed to grab them at random and lead them out onto the floor for just one song at a time played by the band. During this time, he would speak to the girls in his arms. But not too much. He clearly was not taking the time to really get to know anything about them. And Clara suspected that might have been because of her. Do not get carried away. She had to warn herself over and over again. This is not the start of some wonderful romance. I could never be with Lord Bennett, even if I was not here as part of a revenge plot. I am from far too low a class. Clara found it very strange that she was even having such a thought. Of all the lords and dukes that she had spent time with during her years in London, she had never thought anything along those lines. She had never desired to be rescued by them. She had not ever pictured herself as a lady. But now her imagination kept getting the better of her. Maybe it was all the dreaming about the life that awaited her messing with her mind. Or maybe it was just because Lord Bennett hadn't paid to spend time with her. There would not be anything intimate happening between them, which possibly had her intrigued. May I have this dance? His voice shot right through her entire body. circling her heart for a second. In her daze, as she tried to work out how she really felt about this plan, Clara had forgotten to keep her eyes on Louis the entire time. Seemingly sensing that he'd lost her focus for a second, he had taken the opportunity to sneak up behind her to surprise her. "Oh!" Clara gasped while clutching her hand to her chest. As she turned to look at Louis, she tried to recall all the ways Lord Irving had told her to behave like a lady. But her brain had run blank. She could barely recall her own name. "Yes. Of course you can." She bobbed into an awkward curtsy as she waited for his reply. Louis slid his hand into Clara's and he gave her a bright smile. From a distance, Clara had not noticed that he had the most amazing-looking dimples that popped up onto his cheeks when he was happy. It made him even more attractive to him. Almost dangerously so. "It is good to finally speak with you," Louis commented as they moved onto the dance floor. Clara was surprised that he'd acknowledged their little game in such a way. She was not expecting him to. "May I ask your name?" "Clara." "Just Clara?" Louis appeared bemused. "Not Lady Clara. Something?" Clara's mind reeled in a panicked fashion. Was she supposed to give a fake name? She could not think properly. It was too late to take back the Clara now. But could she give a false surname? No. That would give Louis the opportunity to look her up. And that was the last thing that she wanted. She needed to remain as anonymous as possible. Just Clara. Her heart thundered as she waited for his reaction. Again she found herself filled with the sensation that she was about to be exposed. The vulnerability was challenging for Clara to take. She had spent so long building up a thick outer shell that it felt awful to have it stripped down for even a second. But Louis simply took it as another part of their game. Interesting. He placed his hands on Clara's hips and she took his shoulders in the way that she had seen the other girls doing. At first, Clara tried her best to keep her distance. But Louis had no intention of doing that. This was the one woman that he had been excited about dancing with all night long. And he wanted to get as close to her as possible, without causing a stir in the room. He pulled her sweet body closer to his and smiled. Clara's breath hitched in her throat. There was something about this that felt far more intimate than anything she'd ever done before. "So, just Clara, what else am I allowed to know about you?" He paused thoughtfully for a second. "Your age. Can you tell me that?" "I am 19. She replied quietly. Ice-cold shame trickled through Clara as she spotted Louis' eyes widen in shock. She was probably a whole lot older than the other girls that he had spent time with. In the world of the wealthy people, being unwed at the age of 19 years old was terrible. It had to truly mean something bad about you. Clara realized that she probably should have lied. Just as she parted her lips to somehow pretend that she misunderstood, Louis regained his composure. "You are very beautiful. It makes you appear much younger than you are." Clara cocked her head to one side and gave Louis a knowing look. Maybe her hard life did not show on her face like it did some of the other street girls and courtesans. But it was highly unlikely that she could be considered particularly beautiful in this room, filled with young girls who had never had a worry in their entire lives. "So, just Clara, who is 19. Louis continued with a smile. He was certainly talking to her much more than he had any of his other dancing partners, which was interesting. "What do I need to know about you?" Was this an accusation? Clara's paranoia spiked in terror. "What do you mean?" "Well, you do know that I am looking for a wife tonight, do you not?" "Why, yes." Louis was very straightforward about this. It was not expected. "I know that. If I would like you to be my wife, what do I need to know about you?" "That I am not who I say I am." Clara blushed brightly as that thought crossed her mind. That I am the worst prospect in the room. That if you knew anything about me you would never want to speak with me again. I do not like to reveal myself too quickly. She answered instead, with her chin jutted confidently. When you decide that you wish to be my husband I will tell you more about me then. There is something about you, Clara. Louis chuckled. I am very interested in you. Louis paused then to spin Clara around. She had no idea what she was supposed to be doing. She felt certain that she should have been given more instructions on how to dance the steps properly. But thankfully Lord Bennett seemed so wrapped up in her that he hardly noticed. Things had worked out better than expected. As Clara met Louis' eyes again, her heart raced like crazy. She could feel her body reacting to this man in a way that it shouldn't be. Since she did not usually feel things around men, everything felt intensified. Her emotions for Louis were heightened tenfold. Her breath caught in her throat, her pulse flew through her body. Clara felt her mouth run dry. As she and Louis looked at one another, she felt something monumental shift between them. And for a moment she thought he might actually be about to kiss her. It did not matter about the other people in the room. They had all melted away. But then the music ended, and Clara forced herself to pull away. It was a good thing really, kissing here would be too fast. She would not be able to follow through with the plan properly. Not with her head spinning so rapidly. Where do you think you are going? Louis asked her with a cheeky grin as he pulled on her hand. I would like to dance with you again if you would like that. Oh. Clara was stunned. She had seen Lord Bennett dance with many other people tonight. And it had only ever been for one song. It had to mean something that he was willing to cause a stir by dancing with her twice. Yes, I would like that. She waited for the satisfaction to flood her as Louis pulled her back to him because it was a job well done. She had done exactly what Lord Irving asked of her. She had sparked an interest in this man. She was one step closer to making all of her dreams come true. So why did she not feel that way? Louis is not a good man. She tried to convince herself. Just because he seems to be, does not make it real. Lord Irving would not want revenge unless something terrible had happened. Yet when she looked at Louis she could not see it. She could only see the sweet side of him as he flirted openly with her. She did not think he could do anything to hurt anyone. But maybe she was wrong. Do I get to know anything about you? She asked boldly, trying to distract herself from the inner turmoil. If I decide that I want to be your wife. Oh, so many things. He whispered back. I am a man of many secrets. Clara gulped. She could no longer tell if this was a joke or not. Was he still playing the game, or was Louis trying to tell her something? You do? Louis laughed and winked at Clara. You will have to find out. His eyes moved around the room and Clara was filled with the terrifying sense that she was about to be cruelly rejected. Maybe, once I have fulfilled my duty of dancing with the other guests at this ball, I will let you in on some of them. Right. That was not rejection. But Clara couldn't totally be sure it was a good thing. I see. She commented as a reply. Mysterious. That is me. Eventually, Clara and Louis had to pull away from one another. And it was something that they both struggled to do. Louis felt like he had found the one that he was looking for. He could already see a beautiful picture forming in his mind. But Clara had to focus on another image and it was one that filled her with a horrifying sense of dread. She had to imagine what it would be like when she took Lord Bennett down. Chapter 3. This time, as Clara watched Louis dance with other women, her heart actually hurt. His hands on their waists where they had been on her made her want to scream in utter agony. She knew that it was silly to feel such a way. But she could not control her emotions. Her body was going to feel however it wanted to regardless of what she told herself. Still, it helped to see that he still only stuck to one song with every other woman. Unfortunately, It was not only her who had noticed that. "What makes you so special?" As Clara turned to the side, she was stunned to see the girl she'd been speaking with earlier now giving her an evil look. With her arms folded angrily across her chest and her lips twisted up into a snarl, she lost all of the beauty that she once had. "Excuse me?" Clara replied with her nose held high. She had been looked down on by women like these her entire life, but she was going to have to shake that off if she wanted to maintain the rouse. For now, she needed these women to believe that she was a lady just as much as she needed Louis to. "Did you not hear me?" As the girl giggled nastily, Clara noticed she had a group of friends around her. "I said what makes you so special?" "I do not know what you mean." Clara could feel her cheeks twinging red. But that was as much with rage as it was embarrassment. How dare this girl come towards her with other people by her side? They were like a pack of wolves leaping in on their kill. "Why did Lord Bennett dance with you twice? And what were you talking about?" Clara realized she could take this one of two ways. She could succumb to the bad feelings that these women were trying to instill in her. Or she could use a little bit of who she really was to scare them off. "I do not believe that is any of your business. Do you?" she asked with a smirk playing on her lips. "I think that is only in the interest of me and Lord Bennett." Now it was time for the girl's face to turn a nasty shade of red. Clearly, she was not expecting Clara to answer her back in such a forward manner while she was alone. "Is there anything else?" Clara continued. "Or can I continue on having a very lovely evening at Lord Bennett's ball?" I, the girl sputtered. Eventually, she seemed to come to the realization that there was not anything else that she could say because she stomped her foot and she stormed off, with her friends not far behind her. They were like a group of young, silly girls who did not know any better. Clara felt pleased that she had defeated them. Only that happiness instantly zapped away from her body the moment that she spotted Lord Bennett with someone new. This young girl had beautiful long red hair that spilled down her back in a wonderful way. Her youthful face shone with happiness as she gazed lovingly at the man who had his arms wrapped around her as if she had just received a large sum of money. She felt like that look had probably been on her face as she danced too, which was now a little humiliating. Jealousy twisted in Clara's gut, which was a highly unwelcome feeling. She actually had to clasp onto her stomach to stop the agony from turning into something physical. Because this was not something that Clara had ever experienced before, she was not sure how to take it. "Stop it," she cursed herself inside her mind. "Just remember what all of this is for. Money, a new life, a fresh start. That is much more important than some passing feeling." Clara made the snap decision to step outside of the home for just a moment. She needed to suck some ice-cold, calming air into her lungs, to replace the hard outer shell that she'd developed over the last few years. And only some time away would do that for her. Clara tried her best not to look as she walked briskly from the grand hall and into the house's large hallways. But her eyes could not resist glancing around regardless. Compared to the tiny apartment share that she lived in just outside of Piccadilly, this might as well have been a castle. With its tall ceilings and grand archways, with the artwork hanging casually on the walls, and the decorative ornaments placed carefully in specific spots, it was from another world. Clara had a curtain separating her room from Rose's and May's. That, a mattress, and a few dresses designed to make her look desirable and some jewels that had been given to her from past clients, was all she had in the world. Claire could not help herself. She wanted more. Maybe not as much as Lord Bennett. It did not matter to her if she owned works by famous artists. But she did want a space to call her own home. She did want to live for something else other than sharing her body with others. Finally, she flew through the front door and she breathed in deep. The darkness had well and truly set in now. But the bright white moon had created a natural light to shine over the world. It made looking over the Bennett's land very appealing, indeed. In fact, if this were any other time and she was in this home under any other circumstances, Clara would be tempted to take a little stroll, but she couldn't. Not if she wanted to complete her goal. I wondered where you had run off to. Almost 1 minute in and someone had already discovered her whereabouts. Luckily it was the one person that Clara actually wanted to see. "Hello, Lord Bennett," she replied with a smile. "I just thought it is time to get some air." "Oh, I see. The ballroom not to your liking?" He did not sound angry when he said this. Just bemused. "Just another way in which you are unique, Clara. Every other woman seems very happy to be in there, drinking the free champagne." Clara twisted her neck until she was looking directly at Louis. Unfortunately, she had not had enough time to get herself together because her heart skipped a beat as their eyes connected once more. Every woman is happy to be there because they are being offered the wonderful, desired opportunity to become the wife of the highly respected Lord Bennett. Louis took a step closer to Clara. "And you are not one of those women?" Clara smiled coyly and she shrugged her shoulders. Men liked mystery and intrigue. She had long ago learned that it was a great flirting technique. Maybe, maybe not. "I see." Louis paused for a second before he held out his arm to Clara. "If you do not wish to be my wife, then will you at least do me the honor of coming for a walk around my grounds with me?" It worked. Clara could hardly believe it. There was a part of her that suspected Louis liked her more than the other girls. But to have that confirmed was something else. A part of her wanted to rub the posh, boring ladies' noses in it. Especially the one who was sarcastic with her. But she was more excited to take him up on his offer first. "That sounds wonderful," she answered him breezily. "I have just been admiring your wonderful land and I would love to see some more of it." "This is so typical of my luck." Louis chuckled as Clara slid her arm through his. "I meet the girl of my dreams and she is more interested in my flower bed than me." Clara was not known for being overly romantic. It was Rose who clung tightly onto the dream that she would finally find a lord who would make her his mistress. Even she was not crazy enough to picture herself living as a lady, which Rose and May always mocked her about. Clara vowed to herself that she would never share the romantic feelings that she was currently experiencing with her friends, for she would never hear the end of it. They would laugh at her forevermore. If she told May how captivated she felt by Louis, how intoxicating the sensations he gave her were, she would make jokes about how weak Clara had become. Sure, she would eventually escape into her new life. But she did not want to be reminded as she waited for that to happen. "They are just very nice flowers. That is all." A warmth raced through Clara's body as they walked. It was pleasant to be on the arm of Louis, especially as he currently looked upon her as an equal. Whenever she spent time with lords, she was always very aware of her position in the world. But with Louis, she did not. Of course, he did not know who she truly was. So it was hardly a surprise. Maybe if he did, things would be different. "Do you always intend to be a mystery to me?" Louis asked her with a grin. "I have spoken much less to the other girls here tonight. Yet I feel like I know much more about them. Hanna got influenza when she was only 7 years old. Margaret has 3 sisters and 1 brother. Emma loves to dance." All very dreary facts. Clara rolled her eyes as she answered. "Why on earth would you want to know that?" "I wouldn't." Louis counteracted rapidly. "Not about them anyway. It is you who holds my attention and I would love to know everything about you." Clara gulped. Guilt washed over her as once again she was put in a position where she could not tell Louis the truth. Clara was used to embellishing the truth when it suited, to make herself more desirable, but now she did not like it. Still, she needed to try, if only just a little. For the money. "Oh, what is it that you so desperately need to know?" she answered teasingly. I grew up in a grand home, maybe not as large as yours but good enough. I am an only child, and I did not love to dance too much until tonight. She smiled sweetly and squeezed his arm while batting her eyelashes at him, trying to distract him with some more flirting. You made me change my mind about that one. I did? Louis puffed out his chest happily. I am glad to hear it. You were a wonderful dancer. It was an absolute pleasure to have you in my arms. Clara did not reply to this one. She felt like Louis was simply being kind since it was obvious that she was not too familiar with the steps. Certainly not as much as the other ladies that Louis had danced with. Did you grow up in the city? You do not seem like the others who have lived in London their entire lives. It seemed nothing would derail Louis from his insistence to know more. Clara should have guessed that would happen. He was actually interested in her, unlike the other men. No, I am not. I am originally from the countryside. She answered in a way that was probably a little bit too honest. But I like city life just fine. It must be very different though. It is. Clara replied wistfully. Very different. I am different too. That last part was an accidental thought that spilled out of her mouth. But it was true. If the countryside version of Clara could see her now, she would be very shocked at what she had become. Chapter 4. As Clara and Louis got nearer to his house once more, she spotted the silhouettes of two men standing outside with what appeared to be tumblers of whiskey in their hands, which was the final piece of the jigsaw. She had Louis alone, he seemed very interested in her, and now she had her audience. All she really needed to do next was to be caught in a compromising position with Louis and to reveal who she was. That would be enough to ruin his reputation. Lord Irving told Clara that no self-respecting woman would want to marry him, if he was caught with a lady like her at the night of his ball when he was supposed to be choosing his wife. Personally, Clara did not see what difference it would make when most lords seemed to prefer the company of women like her when they were married anyway. But it was not for her to question what the upper class's pointless unwritten rules were. So, are you coming back inside with me? Louis asked her in a sweet-sounding tone of voice. Or should we run away now and just wait for everyone else work out that I have vanished? Clara tried her best to fit this man in with the image that she had been given of him. Lord Irving had not given her all the details, but he had certainly made out that Louis was someone who deserved this revenge. He let her believe that he was truly a monster, which did not seem to be the truth at all. Certain words rolled around in Clara's mouth. She mostly wanted to ask what had happened between him and Lady Elizabeth Irving, but she could not. Whatever happened, she could not blow her cover or her chance at a better life would be gone forevermore. Louis just did not seem like a monster. He was a very nice man, the kindest lord that Clara had ever met. It killed her inside that she was going to have to destroy him. Have I scared you? Louis laughed happily. Of course I was only joking about running away. We will have to face the real world eventually. He said that in a way which suggested he had already decided that it was Clara he wanted to marry, which only hurt her more. She wanted to seduce him. She only needed him to notice her. She did not actually want to crush him emotionally as well. They grew nearer. Any minute now the two men would turn around to look at them, which was exactly the moment that Clara needed to steal a passionate kiss. The idea was a thrilling one. But what would come after terrified Clara. Are you quite well? Louis asked with concern lacing his tone. You seem to have taken a funny turn, Clara. This is not like you at all. You do not know me. Clara snapped back, suddenly trying to push Louis away. She could not help it. Her instincts did not want to follow through on this anymore. Even for the money. Louis seemed like a very nice man who deserved a lovely wife. Whatever happened between him and Lady Irving has nothing to do with Clara. And she should have trusted her initial thought that this whole mess was shady. Now all she wanted was to be back at her terrible, small apartment with her friends, living the life that she had ever since arriving in London. "I want to know you though," Louis replied undeterred. It was almost as if he could not hear the sharpness in her tone. "That is what this whole night has been about." Clara could sense the men turning to look at them. They had heard Louis talking and they wanted to know to whom. She urged herself to reach out, to grab Louis, to pull his lips towards hers. She could almost feel it happening. She knew that it would be easy. Louis wanted to kiss her too, she could sense it. It would be so simple. Just one kiss and her life would be changed forever. "Do it," her brain screamed. "Do it now. This is your one and only chance." But her arms remained frozen to her side as if they were encased in ice. Her legs were firmly planted on the spot as if she were a statue. And her lips would not move however much she urged them to. "Clara?" Louis cocked his head to one side as he examined Clara's appearance. "What is wrong?" "I." She touched her hand on his shoulder and took one small step closer to him. Louis' eyes widened in shock. But he did not look like the idea was unpleasant. From what Clara knew about men, this was a clear indicator that he really wanted her to kiss him. That this was exactly what he wanted. All she had to do was do it. "I." Clara rolled on her feet until she was up on her tiptoes, leaving her lips only inches from his. Her heart pounded so fiercely in her chest she feared it might burst free from her chest. Her mouth had run so dry. It was as if she had been starved from liquid for years. True, she had not had anything to drink all night long. But that was only because she did not want her brain to become befuddled from alcohol. That did not explain why she was so parched. It also had nothing to do with the strange buzzing that raced through her veins. That was all to do with the very lovely Lord Bennett. "Think of the house," she thought as they grew ever nearer. "Think of the money and the freedom. It will all be worth it in the end. I am terribly sorry," she gushed as she pulled back right before the crucial moment. "I cannot. There was nothing in the world that was worth this. She could not do it, just as she suspected right away. I cannot be here." She stepped away from Louis, leaving her body cold and alone. "I should not be here." That information vibrated angrily through her brain. "I have to go." With that, Clara turned on her heels and she ran as fast as she could manage. The wind raced painfully past her skin as she moved and her brain raced like crazy. But still, she could not stop. She was giving up a lot by making this rash decision. She was condemning herself to a life as a courtesan. An opportunity like this would never come around again. But she felt light as she raced away. It felt like the right thing to do. It was not the smart decision, but it felt like the moral one. "Clara!" Louis called loudly after her as she ran away. "Clara, where are you going?" He had absolutely no idea what had just happened. One minute he was having the best night of his life. He had decided that Clara would be the woman that he married. If only to find out all of the wonderful mysteries that she kept trapped inside. And it seemed that she was happy to do so. She was even about to instigate a risky kiss. Which was not like a lady at all. Most of the ladies that Louis had met in his time were obsessed with their reputation, and the rules associated with that. It was refreshing to find someone different. But now she was gone. It was barely time for the end of the ball and she was racing into the night as if something had spooked her. With her silky blue dress flowing out behind her, and curls breaking free from her restrictive hairstyle, she looked more beautiful than before. Louis was torn. He did not know whether he should run after Clara or not. She seemed like she did not want to be chased down, but he was not keen on the idea of her racing through the streets of London alone either. The city could be a dangerous place. There was no telling who might be out there. It was a terrifying thought. Then again, it was very likely that she had a carriage waiting for her outside his grounds. All the ladies had drivers to escort them to where they needed to be. Who was that? His father's voice rang out, making Louis jump. Louis turned to see him standing outside the house, drinking with one of his friends, which was a huge surprise. He thought that he and Clara were alone out here. Maybe that was why she ran. Maybe she saw that they were being spied on and it freaked her out. That idea bucked Louis up, as long as it was not because she didn't want him. He didn't mind. "That, father," he announced with a bright smile, "is the woman that I am going to marry." "You have decided already?" he asked with surprise. It had taken Louis so long to make the decision to find a wife, that he thought it would take much more time to figure out which woman was perfect for him. "Who is she? Who is her father?" "I do not know anything about her father. Only that she is called Clara. But I will find out. You do not have to worry about that." "What about the ball?" his father asked as Louis made his way back inside the house. "Shall I tell the other guests to go home?" "Let them stay," Louis answered generously. It took the staff a very long time to get this party together. It would be a shame for it to end so early. "So, you intend to continue dancing with those poor girls, even though you have already picked your wife?" All of a sudden, Louis' declaration did not seem so valid. "Or are you planning to keep your options open in case things do not work out with the mysterious Clara who just ran off into the night?" Louis could tell that there was an accusation on his father's tongue. But he refused to rise to the bait. Yes, he had disappointed his father when he refused to marry his friend's daughter. But that was because he did not want his future bride chosen for him. And especially not Elizabeth Irving. There was nothing wrong with Elizabeth exactly. Louis felt certain that one day she would make some man very happy. But she was not the one for him. He did not feel anything for her. And he could not see the point in marrying someone if there wasn't even any love in the beginning. In a bid to make her own life easier, his mother had tried her best to convince him that the love would come later, just as it had for her and his father. But Louis would not be swayed. As it turned out, he had a very stubborn streak when it came to how he lived his own life. Plus, Louis thought that there was something very odd about Lord Irving. His father might have liked him, but he certainly wasn't keen on having him as a father-in-law. "I am not going to dance with anyone else," he declared with pride. "Not now that I know who I want. But others can still have fun. Can they not?" He chuckled as he patted his father's arm. "Maybe you and Mother should have a dance. It has been a long time since you swung her around on the dance floor. Has it not?" Louis knew that he had silenced his father, which was a victory in itself. Soon he would see that Louis knew what he was doing. And then he would understand why Elizabeth Irving could never make Louis happy. Someone like Clara could keep him interested forever. First, he just had to find her. Chapter 5. Lord Walter Irving was disappointed with the lack of follow-up information from the ball. He expected to hear right away that the man who had cruelly rejected his daughter had been found in the arms of a prostitute. It was supposed to be a huge scandal, one that got the whole of the city talking. So he felt frustrated and annoyed when the very next morning he got no news. It was safe to say that he was not a man that liked to wait. He debated going to the girl's home. That was the reason he'd persuaded her to leave her address with him after all, but in the end, he made the decision to take a step back. To simply give things time to happen. Maybe she had some scheming, conniving plan that would take a little time. Maybe Clara wanted to prove herself worthy of the money he was offering her for her part in this plan. It was a fair amount. Enough to keep her content for the rest of her days. Maybe she wanted to prove herself worthwhile. Patience. He just needed a little bit of patience. Soon, everything would fall into place and he could finally feel satisfied once more. Lord Irving was no stranger to scheming. He had done a lot of it during his rise to the top. As he neared adulthood, he quickly learned that the family fortune was dwindling, that his father had gambled most of it away in a secret habit of his, and that if he were not careful, he would end up shamed in polite society. Walter did not want to become one of those people that others pitied. He wanted to be on top, looked up at, seen as someone to admire. At first, he felt guilty for getting involved in shady business dealings. He did not like what he felt himself becoming. But since it was either that or a failure like his father, he threw himself wholeheartedly into it and quickly became one of the most ruthless businessmen in London. Of course, that was not enough. Lord Irving always found himself wanting more. After almost losing his fortune once, he did not want to risk that ever happening again. So he ensured that the girl he married came with a hefty dowry. He did not care about love. He was not even bothered about liking his new bride. He simply wanted more money to help him feel secure. The first time he ever truly felt real love was when Elizabeth was born. Before then, Walter did not even realize that he didn't understand love. As soon as he laid eyes upon her, his entire chest warmed. His heart filled with love. And the world finally became colorful. After that, everything he did was for her. He continued down the path of shady business that guaranteed results, all in the hope that his beautiful daughter would have a wonderful life. That was also the reason he picked Louis to be her husband. Lord Bennett, Louis' father, was a pleasant enough man. Maybe a little dim, but he had done well enough for himself. His son had the makings of something else. He had a sharp mind, one that could be crafted into something just as ruthless as he was. In short, Walter felt like Louis could offer his daughter the life that she deserved. It was all set up, it was all supposed to be progressing perfectly. Lord Bennett had agreed, as far as Walter was concerned. Their children would do as they pleased. He certainly did not expect Louis to turn his gorgeous sweetheart down. And why the hell would he? She was beautiful, desirable, intelligent. Everything any man could possibly want. She even had those wide, childbearing hips that men who wanting a family desired. Walter could not understand it, not at all. To make things worse, Louis' rejection made Elizabeth lose her confidence. She took it personally and became withdrawn and sad. It did not seem to matter what Walter did. He could not cheer his baby girl up. Which was why he started to seek revenge. It was not right. Lord Bennett should not have promised his son if he was not willing to enforce his rule. Louis should have realized that he was being presented with the best offer in the world. That he could never get another bride as great as his daughter. They both needed to pay, and this was the best way to do it. Elizabeth did not know what Walter had planned. And he had no intention of telling her. She was finally on the road to recovery. And he eventually wanted to wed her to another suitable man. He feared that even mentioning Louis' name would send her back at least 10 steps. He could not have that, she deserved so much better. No, this was something he needed to do on his own. Sir? The house's butler interrupted Lord Irving's thoughts, making him jump in his seat. I am terribly sorry to disturb you. But there is a gentleman at the door for you. He has a letter for you which he says he needs to deliver in person. Walter rolled his eyes as he stood up. He knew that the staff would not come to him in his office unless the information they needed to share with him was vital. Clearly, there was something about this that he needed to see. Fine, I am on my way. As Walter walked towards his front door, he tried to shake off the bitter feeling that he had inside. He liked to have a clear head when dealing with unexpected visitors, especially if it was business-related. But the man standing in front of him was not someone that he recognized at all. Walter instinctively stood up straighter, he tossed his shoulders back, and his chin jutted out. He was known as a powerful man, and that reputation needed to continue. How may I help you at this early hour? He asked the visitor coldly. "I am here on behalf of Lord Bennett," the man replied, ignoring Walter's harsh tone. "He is searching for someone and I am merely here to see if this might be someone that you know." Walter screwed up his nose in confusion. He did not understand exactly what was happening here. There was a part of him that suspected he might have been responsible for what was happening now, but he wasn't sure how exactly. "Who is it he is looking for?" When the man didn't answer him, he snatched the scroll and scanned his eyes over the words. He did not need to see much to understand what was happening. One word jumped out at him and brought a sick, twisted smile up onto his lips: Clara. It had worked. His patience had paid off. Walter did not fully understand Clara's plan, but clearly having Louis fall madly and publicly in love with her was a big part of it. This was even better than anything Walter could have hoped for. Now everyone would be aware when she turned out to be nothing more than a common whore. It took all of Walter's self-control not to burst into laughter. "He is searching for someone named Clara?" he asked in a much more pleasant tone. "Someone he met at his ball?" "He is." The man nodded. For a moment, Walter examined him closely to see if there was any recognition there. But it seemed that this man had absolutely no idea that Lord Irving was the father of the girl that Louis once turned down. He knows only that she is a lady living in London and he wished to locate her. If this is someone that you might know, then he would be very grateful for any information. "I am sure there is some way in which you can be rewarded." "I am not certain myself," Walter interjected while handing the man back the paper. He did not want to seem too involved in this plan at all. In case Louis got wind it was he who knew the lady. "But I will ask my daughter when she is available. If I can discover anything, I will be certain to let your young lord know about it right away." The man bobbed his head into a bow. "Thank you very much. Your assistance will be truly appreciated." Once the gentleman was gone, Lord Irving wandered back to his office with a happy bob in his step. This was perfect, he could have screamed with joy. Unless... All of a sudden, a horrific thought burst through his brain and it stunned him to the core. It hit him that maybe there was much more to this than he first realized. In his joy that things may be going to plan, he missed something painfully obvious. Now that it was there in his brain, it made all the blood in his body run icy cold. What if the love was not one-sided? What if Clara felt something for Louis too? What if they met at the ball and a deep connection was shared? Walter knew well that there was only one thing more powerful than money. One thing worth giving up everything for. Love. Maybe that was why Clara had vanished, why Louis was looking for her. Why she had not come to him. "Grab my coat," Walter yelled out to no one in particular. That one thought alone had been enough to send him into a state of panic. He needed to take action before he went into a complete meltdown. "Alert the driver. I need to go out for the afternoon." "Father?" He was stopped by his lovely daughter who had heard his yelling as it radiated through the house. "Where are you going?" He forced a calm smile on his face and stepped forward to run a finger down her cheek. Maybe she was 16 years old now, but she would always be his baby. "This is all for you," he thought in his mind as he looked into her green eyes. The one thing she got from him. "I am doing this out of love for you. I just have some business to attend to. That is all," he commented quietly. "I shall be back before dinner, and I will see you then." Elizabeth hugged her father close. "You are always so busy, father. I miss you when you are away." "All for you. It is all for you." "I know." He stroked her hair for a moment. "But I shall be back soon. Your mother will be here until then." "Mother is out shopping." Elizabeth was not surprised that her father didn't know where her mother was. She had grown used to their cold, unloving marriage. She expected that she herself would one day end up in such a position, which was why she was not in a hurry to be wed. Yes. The rejection from Lord Louis Bennett had hurt her at the time because she assumed that she was not beautiful enough for him. But now she felt grateful for it. She no longer minded, because she much preferred being at home with her parents. Right. Well, I shall see you at dinner regardless. Walter's mind was too single-minded to worry about where his wife was currently. He needed to get to Piccadilly, to speak to the prostitute who was supposed to be doing his bidding right now. If love had come into the equation, then he would simply have to up his financial offer. Everyone had a price. Clara would certainly have one. He just needed to find it. Even if love was more powerful than money, he would be able to find a way to make it worth her while. Walter had enough, he could afford it. He would just have to work harder in the future. He would have to pick a very wealthy husband for his daughter. He would find a way to make it work. Elizabeth was worth it. Revenge would be worth it. Chapter 6. Clara. Rose's shrill voice burst through the apartment, shocking Clara. She was already on edge. She had been ever since the night of the ball. So this was enough to really set her off. Clara, there's a nice gentleman here to see you. Louis, was Clara's immediate thought. It has to be Louis. Her body reacted violently to that thought. She was instantly overloaded with sensations. She had been expecting this visit ever since she ran away from Louis at the ball. Maybe it was arrogant of her to assume that he might come looking for her. But since he'd had such an impact on her, she couldn't help but think that maybe she'd had the same effect on him. It certainly seemed that way on the night at any rate. And if he had discovered who she truly was, then, of course, he would want to come and see her. Chances were he wanted revenge on her for tricking him, and she could hardly blame him. She'd been having nightmares about his beautiful face twisted up in rage ever since that night. And now it seemed that was all about to become her reality. Clara ran her fingers through her hair and stared down at her outfit in a state of panic. She knew that she looked a mess. In her slip dress that she wore around the apartment when she was not working and her face completely free of any makeup. She couldn't have been further from the lady she was pretending to be at the ball. But she did not have time to change now. She had the blue dress. It was stuffed underneath the rest of her clothes until she worked up the courage to face Lord Irving again. But there was no time to put it on. Nor was there any point. He knew who she was if he was here. No dress would change that reality. I am coming. She stammered back fearfully. She wished that she could pretend not to be home until Louis went away. But Rose knew that she was sitting on her mattress. They had been talking only moments before. And she would be relentless. Especially if she thought this was a possible client. The richer the men looked, the keener Rose was to get them into their apartment. Even if it was not for her. Plus, Louis deserved the truth. It was only fair to give it to him. He had been kind to her at the ball. He had shown her nothing but niceness. If he now needed to vent at her, then she would have to just accept that and hope that he accepted her apology. Her heart pounded as she pulled herself up into a standing position. She felt it hammer painfully against her ribcage. As Clara tried her best to gulp down, there was a thick ball of fear so large she feared she might not even be able to breathe anymore. But she continued to move. Facing this head-on was the right thing to do. There was a stagger in Clara's step as she moved, and as her eyes finally found the door, her knees all but gave way from beneath her. Lord Irving? She stammered, confusion flooding her. He was not what she thought she would see at all. In all honesty, Clara had pushed him to the back of her mind until she felt ready. What are you doing here? She had given the man her address on the expectation that he would deliver her payment on completion of the project. But since that had not been done, she could not imagine what he would want with her now. Unless he was furious, of course. There was a huge chance that she'd driven him insane with her lack of cooperation. In which case she was in a lot of trouble. You have been a busy girl, Lord Irving told her with a bright grin. I have to say that I am terribly impressed with you. Clara was not expecting that at all. She did not know how to react to his smiling face. It had her very unnerved. Lord Irving's face fell as he realized that the worst had happened. He had happened. Clara had developed feelings for his enemy, which now made her his enemy too. Unless he could bring her back around again. All hope was not lost yet. I do not believe that you wish to speak with me here. He nodded behind her towards the other girls inside her home. I assume this is something that you would prefer to keep a secret. You should take a walk with me. Clara glanced down at her outfit. It was not appropriate for the outside world really. But that hardly mattered. Frights were often spotted around Piccadilly, so she would hardly stand out. Plus, she really did need to have this conversation away from Rose and May. They knew nothing about the plot that she was involved in, and she wanted to keep it that way for as long as she could. Yes. Let us walk. Lord Irving remained silent as they walked down her steps and out onto the road, which left Clara even more unnerved. This was a dangerous man. She probably should have spotted that right away. She was no match for him. If only she'd spotted that right away, she would not be in the mess that she was in right now. I do not know if you were aware, but Lord Bennett has been searching for a mysterious lady from his ball. Lord Irving looked at Clara out the corner of his eye. So she did her best to keep her expression neutral. She could not give anything away until she was certain about what direction he was going with this. Lady Clara, who would not give him any details about herself. A lady who apparently ran away before he could get to know her, shall we say. I am terribly sorry. Clara stammered awkwardly. I know that I was supposed to. No. What you did was perfect. Lord Irving boomed heartily. Now Louis is obsessed enough with you to try and look for you. So when his comeuppance comes, it will be so public. He grabbed onto Clara's shoulders and stared deep into her eyes. This is even better than I ever could have planned. Clara was not sure what part of that she wanted to focus on more. Was she happy that Louis felt deeply enough to look for her, even though that was a journey that could only end in heartache? Or was she overwhelmed by the thought that Lord Irving felt that it was all a plan? I can only assume that this is your plan, he continued, lacing his tone with a warning. I would not want to see you betray me. His grip got tighter on her shoulders. In her line of work, Clara had faced danger before, but nothing felt as terrifying as this did. You are not about to betray me, are you? No. Of course not. She answered in the only way that she could. Clara would have loved to tell Lord Irving that she could not destroy Louis because she did not think that he deserved it. But ice-cold terror had a grip on her vocal cords, and she could only tell him what it was that he so desperately wanted to hear. I would never betray you. Walter could see the utter terror in Clara's eyes. He knew that he had her exactly where he wanted her. As he loosened his grip, he decided that it was time to stick the landing. He had thought of this on the journey to Piccadilly, and he had decided on his price. It was a lot more than the £100 that he had originally decided to give her. And it would make a huge dent in his fortune. But Walter was so wrapped up in the snake of revenge that was coiling through his body. He could barely think straight anymore. That is very good to hear, Clara. Because I would like to increase my offer to you, seeing as you have done such a good job. Clara could easily see the warning in Lord Irving's look. This was a chance to redeem herself for committing the huge crime of feeling something for the man that she was supposed to be taking down. What do you mean? She asked him quietly. I would now like to offer you £500. Clara's heart stopped dead in her chest. £500 would allow her to live a real life of luxury. Even better than she could have dreamed. It would give her a real chance. It was almost too much for her to handle. 500. She gasped in shock while clutching onto her chest. The revenge is worth that much to you? Lord Irving's expression darkened. I would not offer you that amount if it did not mean that much to me. He blew out a breath of air as if he was trying to keep control of himself. I need this to happen, and it is obvious to me now that I chose the right person when I picked you. Clara was blown away. If this man was willing to pay £500, then Louis must not have been the man that she thought he was. He did have all his charm turned on since he was looking for a wife. And she was only given a short time with him. Maybe there was a chance that she got the wrong idea with him. Then again, Lord Irving currently looked a little unstable himself. Clara had to make a choice, and realistically she knew that there was only one real option available to her. She did not have to like it. She just had to do it. And for £500, maybe it would not be so difficult after all. Yes. She nodded decidedly. I will do it. I thought that might be your answer. Lord Irving ran his eyes disapprovingly over Clara's outfit. Now, just like last time, I will have to have my staff dress you. You cannot go to Louis looking like a common street girl. Clara blanched, but Lord Irving did not seem to notice. So I suggest that you come to mine now and we will get everything organized. You can be with Lord Bennett this afternoon. But Clara started as that panicky feeling trickled through her veins again. It was all happening too quickly. She needed time to think this through. But that was exactly what Lord Irving wanted to avoid. He did not want to give Clara the chance to talk herself out of this. But, what? He smirked. You have to work? You think you will earn more from the men around here than you will working for me? Clara had no argument to that, so she simply shook her head. She supposed that the sooner she got it over and done with, the better. Right. Then let us get going. There is work to be done. A sinking feeling tumbled through Clara's body as she followed behind this man who now terrified her. There was so much she wished that she could take back. If only she was not at the opera that night. If only Lord Irving had not chosen her. If only she had said no in the first place. Well, Clara had learned her lesson now. She would never let greed get the better of her again. If she made it out of this mess unscathed, then she would be content with exactly what she had and nothing more. Sure, it was not the best life. But there were probably worse things that she could be doing. Probably. May certainly seemed happy with her life at any rate. She probably just needed to take some life lessons from her friend. Chapter 7. Knock, knock. Clara's hand shook as she stood at the door to the Bennett house in another uncomfortable outfit. He knock felt so loud it vibrated through her entire body, which did not help with the guilt that was racing through her system. When she ran away from the ball, she never expected to see this building again. And now that she was here, she felt that she should have stuck to that initial thought. It was bigger somehow, and much more intimidating. As the door swung open and Clara found herself staring at a tight-faced man in a suit, she did not know what to think. Forgetting who she was, she bobbed into a curtsy as she felt that this man was leagues above her. As he gave her a strange look, a blush filled her cheeks. So she spoke rapidly to try and cover it up. I'm here for an audience with Lord Louis Bennett. She tried her best to recall the words that Lord Irving had told her to speak, but they evaded her now. Her brain felt empty. I have been informed that he is looking for me. I am Clara. The butler's eyes widened. He knew that his young master was searching for a mysterious lady that had vanished on the night of the ball. He had sent out messengers to see if anyone knew her. Now she had turned up on his doorstep. It was almost beyond belief. I will see if Lord Bennett is available. He answered Clara, already knowing that the answer would be yes. If you would like to come inside, you can wait in the drawing room. Clara took a seat where she was commanded to do so, and she tucked her endless skirts underneath her butt. The dress that Lord Irving had chosen for her to wear this time was almost torturous, it felt so heavy. She was certain he had done it to punish her for her misdeeds. Well, not anymore. Now, she simply needed this done. There would be no more messing around. She would complete the mission that she had been sent on before it destroyed her completely. "It is good to see you, just Clara." Clara felt compelled to close her eyes as she heard Louis' chocolatey smooth voice. It flowed through her as if it was meant to be there. As if it was a part of her. "I was starting to think that I would never see you again. I have heard that you went looking for me," she replied in a raspy tone of voice. It was difficult to keep the emotion from her words when it lay thickly on her tongue. "Is this true?" "It is." He was nearer now. His voice was that much closer to her. Any minute now, Clara would be forced to see Louis again. Long before she felt ready for it. "As it turns out, you are a very challenging person to track down. I did not think that I would ever find you. I searched all through London and got no word. It is still a mystery to me where you live. And that is just the way I like it." Finally, she prized her eyes open, and when they fell upon Louis, her strong resolve began to crumble. When he smiled at her in such a sweet and kind-looking way, it was challenging for Clara to recall what this was all about. All she could think about was him kissing her. And them falling into love. The real kind. The sort that would last forevermore. Her father did not talk much about her mother, it pained him to do so. Every time he mentioned her, Clara noticed a true agony behind his gaze. But there was one thing that she was certain of. They loved each other fiercely until the very end. And that was always what she had wanted for herself. She simply did not expect to find feelings that could develop into that in such an unlikely place. "Is that why you have decided to come to me?" "It is," she replied curtly. "I have already told you that I will not reveal anything until I am married." Very rapidly she remembered herself. She needed to act seductively with this man. She could not push him away. She needed to change her game completely. So she softened her expression and spoke more kindly. "And maybe I was simply too eager to see you again. Once I knew that you were searching for me, I could not sit around and wait for you to find me." Louis smiled, completely sucked in by Clara's words. He had fallen so hard for this stranger that he would have believed anything that she told him. "Well, I am very pleased to hear that." He nodded his head as he answered. "I have scarcely been able to think of anything else since I first lay eyes on you. Would you maybe like to take another walk around my gardens?" Clara gazed up at him under her eyelashes. "I would like that very much." Louis could hardly believe his luck as the beautiful woman he had been dreaming about stood up to walk with him. He honestly was starting to believe that he had made her up in his mind. That he had invented the perfect woman for him. If it hadn't been for the fact that his father saw them out there in the gardens, he would have forced himself to forget. He did not want to accept that he would never see her again. And now he knew that he was right to do so. Fate had brought them back together in a truly wonderful way. "Have you met many lords since moving to London?" he asked her curiously as they moved along the same path as before. It was not uncommon for girls to have a season meeting all the eligible bachelors around. "I have," Clara answered honestly. "But none of them are quite like you." "Is that so?" Louis gave her a curious look. Clara had a deep mind, unlike any other lady he had ever met. He wished that he could climb inside her brain to discover what lay deep inside. He wanted to peel back the mysteries that made her such a fascinating woman. "How do you mean?" "You are kinder." Clara nodded as she spoke. Much as the men she spent her time with treated her well, there was always contempt there. They liked to remember that they were better than her. Friendlier. And more honest too. "I do not see a point in life if you do not live it honestly," Louis told her simply. "You seem to be one of the only ones who think that." I do not know who you have been surrounding yourself with. Louis chuckled. But they do not seem worthy of your attention. A tear balled up in the corner of Clara's eye as the hopelessness of the situation flowed through her. Even if she was not a part of some terrible revenge plot, Louis could never be hers. Upper-class men like him would never give up everything that they owned, the reputations that their families held dear, for a woman like her. It just was not worth it. Even love was not worth it. I am not worthy of theirs, she told him quietly. But that is life. Of course, Louis had no idea what Clara was talking about, but he decided to go along with it. He was growing used to Clara's oddities now. In fact, he really liked them. You are most certainly worthy of my attention. I would like nothing more than to give it to you forevermore. Louis grabbed hold of Clara's hips and he twisted her body around to face him. He wanted to truly make her understand how much he adored her, and how badly he wanted to make her truly his. He wanted her to understand that he did want to make her his wife. This was the one thing that he was certain of. Clara's heart skipped a beat as Louis stared intently at her. She could feel the emotions that she had been trying to push down all floating to the surface. There were £500 at stake here. She could really use that money. That dream was attainable. Everything else that she wanted was not. She had to just do this. As Louis cocked his head and he moved slightly towards her, Clara knew that there was nothing that could hold her back this time. She was well aware that this kiss would be for nothing more than them. There would be no audience this time, no evidence that Lord Bennett's reputation had been ruined. But still, she could not resist. She raised herself up onto her tiptoes and she leaned into his mouth, begging him to connect with hers. There was a split second where they both seemed torn. They knew what they wanted to do, but there was something holding them back. There was a part of Clara that wanted Louis to pull away, to turn her down. If he rejected her, then there was nothing she could do about it. Lord Irving would have to let her off the hook. That would be out of her control. Yes, she would be heartbroken, but that was preferable to anything else. She felt certain that she was strong enough to survive some pain coming towards her. But that didn't happen. Their lips connected and Clara's entire body warmed with a comfortable, happy sensation like nothing she had ever felt before. In that moment everything melted, the only thing that Clara was aware of was her and Louis' lips. With his arms snaked around her waist she felt safe from everything, even the potential wrath of Lord Irving. With Louis, it felt like all of that simply disappeared and none of it mattered anymore. I am terribly pleased that you did not run away this time, Louis murmured quietly against Clara's lips. His breath tickled her and sent a powerful shiver racing up and down her spine. This feels like a much better ending to our time together. Does it not? Clara nodded, despite her better judgment screaming at her. Yes. That this was a much better ending. And I hope I do not have to spend days searching for you again. Louis did not sound annoyed as he said that. After kissing his elusive lady, he did not think that he would ever be angry again. I hope I will get to see you very soon indeed. Maybe you will even tell me where you live this time, to make it much easier for me. Oh no. Of course, Clara could not do that. It was completely out of her control. I will come and see you again soon. She took a step back and brushed down her dress. I promise you will not have to wait as long. I do not want you to leave already. Disappointment crushed Louis. He did not mean for his comments to be taken as an invitation to leave. He was not done with Clara at all. He wanted to be with her for as long as possible. You do not have to go. But the fog in Clara's brain suggested otherwise. I have prior engagements which I must attend. That sounded like the sort of thing a lady would say, didn't it? But like I said, I will be back soon. You will not have to wait long again. It tugged even harder at her as she walked away this time, making it even more challenging to do so. Her much slower pace was difficult too. It gave her far too much time to turn back to Louis, to race back into his arms. But for now, she needed space. She needed to work out what was more important to her. Protecting the reputation of a man that she felt certain that she was falling for, or enough money to live a wonderful life. She needed to choose between herself and what her head told her was right, or Louis, who her heart needed to protect.
If you like our channel, please subscribe and make sure to click on the bell icon, so that you won't miss any future audiobooks we'll upload for free each week on YouTube.
Chapter 8. This is what I have to do, Clara reassured herself in a calming internal voice as she stood at the door of Lord Irving's home. I will refuse his offer and leave London. Maybe return to the countryside to try and make some life for myself there. With absolutely no money to rely on, Clara was well aware that she probably would not make it. But she could not remain here where everything was so terrifying and she would never be able to relax again. She was not even convinced that she was going to make it out of this meeting alive. Never mind anything else. The last thing Clara wanted was to spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, fearing that it could all come to an end at any given moment. The butler had gone to find the lord of the house, and while she waited Clara felt terribly uncomfortable. She had been here before, twice in fact, but with Lord Irving's invitation. She did not think he would be pleased to have his family life disturbed. Clara, he called warmly, causing her to snap her head up from the ground. She was not expecting him to sound so happy to see her. It is great to see you, young lady. Please, come inside. She did not look like a lady today. Clara was wearing her most casual outfit. She needed to look like herself as she declared her verdict on this crazy plan. Clara's body shook as she followed Lord Irving into what appeared to be his office. The good mood would dissolve as soon as the words came out of her mouth, and she was not looking forward to that one bit. Her nerves shook violently, rattling through her bones. You may take a seat, Clara. Lord Irving indicated towards the chair on the other side of his desk. We have much to discuss, I am certain. It will take some time and I do not want your legs to grow weary. He was teasing her. He had to be. Clara could tell that there was a darkness behind his eyes which knew exactly why she was here. He wanted her to confess the terrible crime of falling in love, which he suspected the last time they met with one another. And then the punishment would come next. Thank you, Lord Irving. He watched her intently as she lowered her body. Then he rested his face onto his hands. Please, Clara. Tell me why you are here today. I can only imagine that it is to update me on our plan. You met with Lord Bennett yesterday. Did you not? How did that go? Have his feelings for you developed further? Yes. Clara whispered her honest answer. They have. Well, come on. Do not leave me with nothing. What happened? We kissed. Clara's eyes fell into her lap as she recalled the magic of that moment. It had carried her right through the night and kept her eyes wide open until the morning. Louis was a good man. Whatever had happened between him and Lady Irving was a thing of the past. She loved him because of the gold shade of his heart. However much she was being paid, whatever amazing life she could lead now, she could not do it. Love trumped money. I see. Lord Irving's tone took an icy cold turn. And that stirred up some feelings for you. Did it not? There was no point in being dishonest. She was here for a reason. She needed him to understand one way or another. It did. So you are here to tell me that, just as the plan has gotten to its crucial moment, you wish to pull out? I am truly sorry. Clara muttered sadly. I did not mean for any of this to happen. Love comes as a surprise. Does it not? Shockingly, Lord Irving did not sound as angry as Clara expected. As she stared at him, he shrugged his shoulders and continued. It may not come as a giant shock to you that I do not love Elizabeth's mother. Clara pursed her lips tightly together. As far as she could see, the lives of the upper class were very cold and unfeeling. It did not really seem like a better option. But she figured with money everything was at least easier for them. Many of us do not love our wives. We marry for money and convenience. That is what keeps women like you in business. Clara shifted uncomfortably in her seat at the accusation. But love found me nonetheless. Clara waited expectantly for a story about some mistress that he housed somewhere nearby, ready for whenever he needed to use her at will. But somehow that never came. When my daughter was born, I finally discovered what true love felt like. Oh. Well, that was shockingly sweet. It also reminded Clara of her own father. Maybe he went down a dark path after his wife passed away and he made some very silly financial choices. But he always let Clara know that he loved her. That was something that he never had to question. Elizabeth is a lovely girl, with a bright future ahead of her. She is pretty, kind, big-hearted, and she needs a man who deserves her. All of a sudden, Clara was not sure that she wanted to hear this story after all. She had been intrigued by what had gone on in the past between Elizabeth and Louis. But all she wanted now was to escape all of this. Unfortunately for her, Walter wanted this story to be heard. It took me a long time to choose a family and a suitor that I thought deserved my precious daughter. I decided on Louis because his father has a big heart. And he has a sharp mind. Yes, the family is very wealthy and that helped my choice. We rich prefer to stay that way. But it was not just that. I decided that he was perfect. I am certain you understand why. Of course Clara did. Louis was a wonderful candidate. That was just another reason why she needed to get away. Yes, I understand why. So you can also understand my disappointment when Louis decided that he was too good for my daughter. Lord Irving stood up and towered over Clara. You can understand how rapidly my opinion changed of him when I discovered that he found himself to be above the wonderful Lady Elizabeth Irving. I am sure that must have hurt. Clara was not really sure what she was supposed to say here. There had to be some reason that Louis did not want Elizabeth. Maybe he did not want to be in a loveless marriage. Of course. That was clearly not a wise thing to say to a man who thought his daughter was the most incredible person alive. Of course, Elizabeth was devastated. It crushed her to learn that the man she had been promised to did not want her. It sent her spiraling into sadness. For months I thought that she might never recover. I am sorry. In a way, Clara felt like she could relate to this mysterious Elizabeth. She felt that same horrific heartbreak. In the same way that this poor girl did. The situation was different, of course. But the end result was the same. Neither of them could have the man that they truly wanted. Maybe if Clara's father was alive, then he would want to exact revenge on the man who hurt his daughter too. Or maybe Lord Irving was simply a crazy person. Maybe you understand Elizabeth. Lord Irving commented as if he could see straight into Clara's mind. Maybe you have been made to feel ugly and worthless by a man, too. I am sure in your line of work you do not always meet the most pleasant of men. I have a thick skin. Clara replied as she tried her best to gulp down some of the pain. It does not bother me how others try to make me feel. Yet, you are concerned about the feelings of a lord who is not worried about you. Walter finally managed to get to his point. Sometimes manipulation takes a little longer than usual. Louis will not be worried about how you feel, once he learns who you are. He will simply want you out of his life. He will cast you to one side like he has done my daughter. Which will leave you as heartbroken as she is. The possibility of that being true bristled through Clara. Her nightmares fluttered violently through her mind. I do not know about that. He might show that he loves you now. But that is because he believes you to be a lady. Your precious lord is not who you think he is. He is no different from the rest of us. We will always care about money over love. And you should do the same. Should I? Clara's mind was twisting up in circular knots, leaving her spinning so rapidly she could barely keep herself upright on her chair. She gripped onto the edges of the wood so tightly that her knuckles turned a painful shade of white. You need to remember the £500 that is on offer here. You need to consider the wonderful life that you can have with that money. If you consider how Louis will drop you like you are nothing. This does not seem too hard. Does it not? Lord Irving grabbed onto Clara's hands and he gave her a smile. She cocked her head to one side while she allowed this prospect to wash over her. Maybe he was a wise man. If not a very ruthless one. Maybe he got far in life because he could see things in a way that others could not. But then her heart grabbed hold of her emotions and she snatched her hand away. I cannot, Lord Irving. She scraped her chair back as she stood up. I do apologize for wasting your time. But you need to pick someone else. There is no one else. His voice raised into a yell. I cannot start this all again. It has to be you. But I cannot. Clara insisted. I cannot continue on with this. Every time I am with Louis, I lose the will to complete your plan. She backed away and gave Lord Irving a wild-eyed look. I understand that you think Lord Bennett is a bad man. I know that he hurt your girl and I am very sorry for that. But I just know that I cannot do it. I will mess everything up. A single tear dripped down her cheek. It cannot be me. And I am sorry for that. Lord Irving stomped over to Clara and he grabbed so tightly onto her forearm that they both knew a bruise would eventually appear. You will find a way to make this happen. He insisted. You will do this. I do not care about your pathetic emotions. You will turn them off and do this for me. Or you will regret it forever. Clara knew that Lord Irving meant these words. But she had also been expecting them. This was why she planned on running away from London at the very first opportunity. I will not just harm you. I will hurt your precious Louis too. Walter spat out in temper. His entire face had gone a funny shade of red as anger got the better of him. And not just emotionally. I will kill him. I will have him killed. Do not think that I cannot make that happen. Because I can, and I will. I am sorry. Clara repeated as she tugged her arm away from him. Truly I am. Once she was free of his grip, Clara forced herself to run. First, she needed to get away from this terrifying man. Then she would decide what to do next. First, she needed to escape. That was all that she could think about. Chapter 9. Clara did not run immediately home like she thought she would. Her original plan was to get back to her apartment. To gather up her things, to maybe say goodbye to her friends if they were there. And finally make her escape. There was not much thought put into what would come after because in the heat of the moment that hardly mattered. But now there was somewhere else that she needed to go first. She could not leave without warning Louis about what was potentially about to come. She could not go knowing that there was a threat on his life without him being aware. If Louis did not know, he couldn't protect himself and he probably wouldn't even realize why such terrible things were happening to him. By the time Clara reached Louis' home, she found herself panting and breathless. She knocked rapidly on the door and clutched onto her knees as she tried to regain herself. She undoubtedly looked a frightful mess. Which was hardly the last impression that she wanted Louis to have of her. But that was the least of her worries. Ah, the butler said as soon as he spotted a disheveled-looking Clara. Of course, he had 1,000,001 questions flooding his mind. But he would not ask them. It was not his place to do so. I shall go and get Lord Bennett for you. There was no invite to wait inside this time, which was understandable. Clara did not complain as she waited for Louis to join her. She simply spent the time planning what she was going to say when he finally arrived at the door. She had not exactly been given the time to decide how she wanted to deliver this terrible news. If only time wasn't so crucial here. "Ah, you are back," Louis declared happily. "I know you said that you were going to return sooner than before. But I did not expect." All of a sudden he became aware of Clara's unusual look. Not just her clothes, but her face too. She did not look like herself at all. "Clara? Is everything all right?" "He's coming," Clara panted. "You need to take time to protect yourself because he is hell-bent on revenge." "What on earth are you talking about?" Louis laughed, not understanding the severity of the situation at all. "Have you gone quite mad?" "I am serious, Lord Bennett," Clara continued in a desperate way. "You need to be careful. Lord Irving is. He is." "Lord Irving?" Louis knew that name well, and hearing it caused his face to fall into a frown. "Elizabeth's father?" As Clara nodded, he grabbed onto her arm and pulled her inside his home. "Please, Clara. I implore you to start at the beginning. I need to fully understand what is going on here." "Maybe we should go outside?" she asked him quietly. "Where we will not be disturbed. I have a small office of my own. We can have some privacy in there." As Clara walked behind Louis, she felt even more terror than she'd been experiencing as she followed Lord Irving into his home. Then, she felt determination. Now she simply knew that there was only fear. This was the end of everything. The dream would well and truly die here. They eventually reached a room at the back of the house which had nothing more than a small wooden table and 2 chairs. Some books rested on the table, but that was all. Without being asked, Clara took a seat and she started talking once more. "I am so sorry to come to you with this. I did not want any of this to happen. I simply need you to tell me what has happened from the start." Louis was not cold exactly, but he did not seem the same as before. Clara nodded and she began to explain everything. Right from the very start. The one part that she did not really wish to ever share with this wonderful man. "I met Lord Irving when I was out on a date with another man at the opera. I am a courtesan." Her heart stopped dead on her chest and a fire flamed all over her face. She could not bring herself to look at Louis. But she hardly needed to. She could feel the contempt and rage burning off him from where she sat. She decided to continue while she had his silence. Once he started yelling, it was unlikely that he would ever stop. "He approached me with a ploy that he wanted me to get involved in. A plot to take a man down. A man who had hurt his family. Specifically his daughter." "Me," Louis whispered. He should have known that he would not be able to turn down the marriage to Elizabeth without there being consequences. "Of course. He wanted me to attend your ball and to be caught in a compromising position with you. Before revealing who I am. He suggested that your reputation is everything to you and that by wrecking it, I would help you understand the pain you caused. But it was not right between me and Elizabeth." Louis noted, almost to himself. It would never have been a happy marriage. Why could he not understand that? "I do not know," Clara replied, reminding him that she was there. "All I know is that he wanted revenge." Finally, their eyes connected and for the very first time, they saw one another for what they were. They understood that the both of them had been living in a fairy tale, which had now come crashing down around them. Louis realized that he had been taken for a fool. And Clara understood fully that he could never be hers. She knew that already. But this was the first time she finally got it for real. So, wait. Louis shook his hands in front of him. If you wanted to take me down at the ball, then why did you not kiss me then? It would have been the perfect chance for you. My father was watching us then. I could not. Clara reached out to Louis, but he made no effort to hold her hands. So she quickly snatched them away. I met you, and I realized that you were not what Lord Irving suggested you were. I got to know you and I understood that you were not a monster after all. I also felt something for you, deep in the pit of my stomach, and I could not hurt you. So I ran all the way home to my small apartment above the Queen pub in Piccadilly. But you came back? Louis Kenia would not be fooled by the missing information. You did not feel so bad that you would simply leave me alone? I was offered more money, Clara replied. The hurt flew through her voice. But Louis was not about to be consumed by her emotions. £500 in fact. As I am sure you can imagine. That is a very lot of money to a girl like me. Louis said nothing. Even if he understood that part, he could not entertain it right now. So I came back. But again I found myself falling too deeply. I could not do it. Even for that amount of money. As soon as I left you, I went to tell Lord Irving that I could not do it. But as we have both learned now, Lord Irving does not take it well when his plans do not come to fruition. Yes. And now he has threatened me, and you too. He has said that he will kill us both. So we need to run, or something. Despite everything, Clara held tightly onto the hope that Louis would want to at least secure both of their futures. Not just his own. Yes, Clara had made a mistake. But she clung tightly to the hope that her explanation would help Louis to understand. She had done it for the money. But she had not followed through with it. She had stepped back once she understood that Louis did not deserve it. Louis? Do you understand? Do you hear me? He had frozen to the spot. Almost as if time had completely stopped around him. Louis, you need to make some choices now. I do not know how long it will take Lord Irving to. Just go. He told her sadly. Go and take care of yourself. Louis stood up and he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a few coins and he pressed them into Clara's hand. Take this and get away. Leave this place and never come back. But what about you? Clara did not even look at the amount that Louis had given to her. She did not want to make her escape without knowing what he was going to do. If he did not want to do anything with her, she still wanted to know that he would look after himself. What shall you do? Do not worry about me. I shall be fine. You just get out of here. Clara understood now even more than before how crushing Louis' rejection could feel. It cut deep into her heart, sliced open her chest and made her emotions gush out onto the floor. There was no way that this tragic love story could end in any other way. She was always acutely aware of that. But that did not make it any easier to digest. Louis was telling her to leave. To live her life without him. And it was as if his words had coiled around her insides and they were squeezing the life out of him. Yes, all right. I shall go. She replied, her voice thick with emotion. Again, I am terribly sorry for everything that I put you through. I did not mean for you to get hurt. I am not just a heartless whore. She spat out Lord Irving's cruel words, hoping to shock Louis into saying something. I have fallen in love with you. I know we can never be. But that does not change how I feel. Louis did not say anything. He did not even lift his eyes off the ground to look at her. That hurt worst of all. As if he did not think she was even worthy of a goodbye. Never mind a sharing of his own feelings. As Clara turned to leave, she angrily brushed a straight hair away and she left. Closing the door behind her was the hardest thing that she'd ever had to do. But she did it. As it turned out, she really did have a thick skin. Maybe her time as a street girl had turned her into a stronger person than she had ever realized. When the fresh air hit Clara's face, she prized open her hand to see 5 shillings there. It was certainly enough to get her out of London, which was truly wonderful. More than she ever could have hoped for. Even if Louis hated her for who she was, even if he rejected her in a terribly cruel way, he still wanted her to live. That had to mean something, did it not? Not that it mattered anymore. They would never see one another again. That chapter in her life was over forevermore. Clara's footsteps were slower as she made her way back to Piccadilly. She no longer felt like she was in any rush to get away. The danger that Lord Irving presented to her was still fresh in her mind. But the crushing defeat of heartbreak helped to dull all of that. Knowing that they could have been something truly amazing, had they been born in a completely different world, was devastating. But he would always be the lord who needed a lady for a wife. And she would always be the common, down on her luck, whore. There was never a way that could ever work. It was over. Chapter 10. As she stumbled through the front door into the apartment that she had lived in for the past few years, Clara felt like a completely different person. It was almost as if her entire personality had been stripped from her body, and the person left behind was nothing more than a shell. Just there to carry her around and nothing more. It might have only been a few days, but the events with Louis had altered her forever. "Where have you been?" May cried out gleefully. "Rose said you left a while back with some very rich-looking lord. I thought he might have taken you in as his mistress or something." As May finally saw Clara, and she spotted the true sadness in her eyes, she stopped in her tracks. "Clara, what is wrong?" Without even meaning to, Clara burst into tears. She sobbed so hard it was as if years of pent-up sadness was flowing from her eyes. Shh. Being the good friend that she was, May wrapped her arm around Clara and she took her over to sit on her mattress. The girls had no room for luxuries such as a couch. "Calm down, Clara. Tell me what is wrong as soon as you are ready." May suspected what might have happened. Their lives were dangerous ones. Many girls in their position had suffered terrible things at the hands of the men who were paying for their company. So far, they had managed to avoid such horrors themselves. But it seemed that their streak of luck had finally come to an end. It was Lord Irving. Clara finally managed to stammer through the sobs. "He is the one who caused all of this." "What did he do to you? Do you need me to sort him out?" This offer was not a serious one, of course. May only wished to make Clara laugh. "I can go around to his home and punch him on the nose if you like." No. He is a very dangerous man," Clara insisted, taking her friend's suggestion far too seriously. "You must not go anywhere near him." "Oh, right, okay." May furrowed her eyebrows in confusion. "Well, I was only joking with you. But now I am concerned. Please, Clara. You must tell me what is wrong." "Lord Irving wanted to get me involved in a plan like a game?" May was still thinking along the lines of deviant behavior. She had not even considered the prospect that it might be something else. "What sort of game?" "No. Not a game. He wanted me to help him with a revenge plot. He wanted me to ruin the reputation of another lord who rejected his daughter's hand in marriage." "What?" May pulled back and gave Clara a wide-eyed look of shock. "That is crazy. So, he set his daughter up with a man who did not want to marry her. And now he wants to get revenge? And where do you fit into the picture?" "I was supposed to kiss him at the ball he held to find himself a wife. And then reveal who I truly am." "That sounds dangerous," May interjected seriously. "Very risky for you to agree to." "I was offered a very lot of money to do it." "A lot of money?" Enough to never have to work again. May went misty-eyed at the idea of never having to work again. Out of all the three girls, May was the one who seemed most comfortable with the lifestyle that they led. But even she wanted the cash to never have to do it again. She was starting to see why Clara might have been lured into what sounded a very scary path. She did not like to think about what she would do for enough money to never work again. Oh my goodness, so why did you not just do it? That sounds like a very easy way to make a whole lot of money. Clara bit down on her bottom lip, which trembled with emotion. She could barely stand to say it. She did not want to admit that she had been so foolish, but she was going to have to, if she wanted May to fully understand. Because I met Lord Bennett, she whispered. And he was a very nice man. Nothing like the man Lord Irving described him to be. So? May shrugged. What does it matter? It does not matter to you what sort of man he is. He has money, you have the chance to make your existence better. You should take the chance whatever it takes. But it does matter to me, Clara admitted. I rapidly developed feelings for this man and I just could not do it. May was stunned into silence. It was the first unwritten rule of street girls not to fall in love. Usually, that related mainly to the clients they were working with. But since Lord Bennett was a part of a job, even if it was a revenge plot, May figured that it still counted. She could not believe that someone she considered so smart could end up doing something so silly. Having not been through it herself, she wondered why Clara could not simply turn her emotions off. But her friend was far too upset for her to ask that question. I know that I am foolish, Clara continued, seeing the question in May's eyes. I know I have made some silly mistakes. But it is done now. I have told Lord Irving that I cannot continue with the plan. I have told Lord Bennett the truth and now I need to go. Go? Where? You cannot leave. I need to get out of London. I cannot stay here anymore. Lord Irving is very angry at me for messing up his plan. And I am scared that he might come after me. I will protect you. Clara reached out and took May's hands in hers. She would be sad to say goodbye to her friend, but she had to do it to escape the terrifying fate that waited for her. You are a good friend, May. I do not know where I would be without you and Rose. But I really do have to leave the city now. I cannot stay in a place where I fear I will be looking over my shoulder forevermore. It will all blow over. I know that it will not. Clara shook her head to emphasize her point. Unfortunately, there was not a single thing that her friend could say that would keep her behind. She was playing it down so May did not panic. But inside she was swirling with terror. I need to leave now. It is the next step for me. Clara rolled her fingers over the coins in her hand, before giving 2 of them to May. She then tucked the final 3 in one of her pockets. This will cover my part of the rent for a while, giving you the chance to find another roommate. You really do intend to go then? May asked sadly. You are set on that? I am. I think I shall return back to the countryside. I always felt like I was more content there. Images of rolling greenery filled Clara's mind as she tried to get herself excited about what was to come. I am certain that I will find some work there. Something that I take to much better. And I will get myself somewhere to live through that. I do not want you to go, but I understand why you feel this is the right choice for you. Thank you for your understanding. Clara wrapped her arms around her friend and she enveloped her in a hug. I will miss you very much. I wish we did not have to part ways like this. But it is for the best. May watched as Clara rose from the mattress to go and collect her belongings together. A terrible sadness overcame her. She was close to Rose too. The 3 of them had found themselves in this life together and they had done all that they could to make the best of it. But she had always felt closest to Clara. She did not want her friend to go, It was the end of an era and she was not sure what would happen next. Out of all the girls, Clara was the most unlikely to get herself involved in such a plot. May could not understand how it had happened. But since it did truly seem very dangerous, maybe it was best for Clara to escape. "You all right?" she asked as she hugged her friend for a final goodbye. "When you get to wherever it is that you are going, I will not know where you are, but I can guarantee that I will still be here." "Of course," Clara assured her. "I do not want to lose touch with you." She paused for a second and pursed her lips. "Will you explain to Rose that I have left? But maybe do not tell her the full story. She will only judge me for being so crazy." "I will tell her that a handsome young lord has made you his mistress. That will drive her insane. You know that is her dream for herself." Clara laughed gratefully, glad to have something happy to take with her as she left. She would recall May's joke for her entire journey, picturing what Rose's reaction would be to such a revelation. On her journey to the countryside. "I shall miss you, May. Goodbye." The apartment felt so much emptier without Clara in it. Even though nothing had really changed, her mattress was still there, taking up the same amount of space. Without her clothing spread right across it, the bed seemed much smaller. May grabbed onto her chest and she forced herself to breathe carefully for a few moments. She truly felt like she was grieving for the death of a loved one. Knowing that she would never see her friend again was harder than she thought it could be. Knock knock. "Oh, thank goodness," May muttered with a smile as it became acutely obvious that her friend had changed her mind. "You do not have to knock, you know," she said much louder. "This is still your home, even though you left it less than 5 minutes ago." Her words trailed off as she swung the door open to reveal an unexpected male figure standing there. He was tall, muscular, and had a very handsome face. "I am sorry," he told her softly. "You must be expecting someone. A person who is not me." May nodded, but she could not find the words to say anything. "I am Lord Bennett, and I am looking for Clara." Lord Bennett? This was the man that Clara had lost everything for. Looking at his stunning face made everything a little clearer. But still, she could not understand why things had taken such a terrible turn. "Is she here?" As Lord Bennett asked that question, May realized that she had been staring at him like a fool for far more than the acceptable amount of time. She blushed and rapidly glanced away from him. No. Actually, you have just missed her." "She is gone already?" He ran his fingers through his hair as his expression tightened with stress. "I wanted to speak with her first. I hoped I had not missed her. I did not leave things in a good way." "Oh well, she does not seem to bear you any ill will." May could only recall Clara saying nice things about this man. "But if you are searching for her, there may still be time. She did not leave too long ago." "Do you know where she is headed?" "She did not say anything specific. Just that she is returning to the countryside." With that, Lord Bennett span on his heels and he was gone, chasing after the woman he now realized that he loved more than anything in the world. Chapter 11. Clara walked briskly through the streets of London with her eyes concentrating on her feet. Now that she had made the decision to go, she simply needed to find a way to make that happen. There was no point in looking back anymore. She could not think about Louis again. She had told him the truth, she had begged him to protect himself. There was nothing more that she could do. For now, at least. She needed to concentrate on protecting herself. She intended to start with the steam train first as a way to make it to the countryside. She figured it was best for her to leave in the same way that she came. Even after giving May some of her money, she still had enough to get far enough away from London to reinvent herself as someone new. Maybe she would even give herself a new name to truly protect her identity. She had always fancied herself as a mysterious Lola. Or something like that. Clara. As Clara heard a voice calling out her name, she automatically dragged her eyes upwards. Her heart lifted in the childish hope that despite everything, Louis had come looking for her. Rationally she knew that would never happen. They had said their goodbyes in a way. And that was the end of it. But that was where her mind went regardless. Clara. Over here. She span wildly, trying to work out who would be yelling at her in such a way. She knew a few people in and around the area of Piccadilly. But no one who would be that excited to see her. She moved her feet briskly, checking down the small, dark alleyways attached to the main street. Just as she was about to give up and continue on her journey to the steam train, a hot, shocking pain exploded in the back of her head, which made everything slide into a pinhole, eventually causing the whole world to turn to black. What is happening? Clara thought desperately as her body slid rapidly towards the ground. What is going on here? But she never got her answer, because it was not long until everything disappeared completely. Clara's head pounded painfully as she pried her eyes back open. She could not remember much, but it felt like she was waking up from the most horrific night of sleep that she had ever had. It felt like her brain was filled to the brim with nightmares, which had affected her physically as well as mentally. She gurgled as she raised her head. Her neck ached so painfully that her muscles all the across her shoulders hurt too. She had slept in some awkward places in her time, but this felt like the worst. She blinked a few times, trying to drag up some memories. She was trying to escape Lord Irving, and Louis had given her some money to do so. She was headed towards the steam train. Was that where she'd fallen asleep? On a train seat? No. That did not feel quite right. She didn't make it to the train station because something happened to her along the way. The pain, the blackness, it all came screaming back to her. Something bad had happened to her, something truly bad. And now that she was awake she needed to work out what. "Hello?" she asked quietly. "Is anyone there?" She continued to blink, to try and bring the world to life around her. But whatever had hit her had hurt her brain so badly it was challenging. Everything was blurry and it made her feel sick. "Ah, Clara. You are finally awake." Her heart sunk as the familiar voice tore through her system. Of course, she could not have even begun to suspect anyone else. "Lord Irving. You might as well call me Walter now," he told her in a bemused tone of voice. "After all, class and titles do not matter in here anymore. We are not here under any kind of formal setting." Clara stared at him, undeterred by the fact that she could not really see him. She should have known that she would not be able to escape before this vindictive man came after her. Still, if he was taking his revenge out on her, then maybe he would leave Louis alone. It was a small victory, but a victory all the same. "What are we here for then?" she asked firmly. "What is all of this about?" Walter laughed long and loud, really unnerving Clara. He sounded unhinged. And if he had truly succumbed to madness then there was no telling what he would do. Insanity was the scariest thing that Clara could be faced with. The plan before was a little insane, but it was born out of love for his daughter. Whatever this was, seemed like more than a step too far. "I need the world to see that they cannot cross me," Walter finally clarified. "You and Louis have betrayed me in the worst way possible. And I need to make everyone see that I will not stand for it." Clara tried to pull her arms up in front of her. But as her vision returned so did the rest of her senses and it quickly became clear that she was tied to something in Walter's office. The room that everyone else in the house probably already avoided like the plague. "Perfect. How will people know?" she asked boldly. "I am sure that no one knows you have a prostitute tied up in your office." She cocked her head to one side and gave him an imploring look. That seems to reflect worse on you than anyone else. Walter's cheeks heated up, clearly. This was not something he had considered. It hardly matters, does it? As long as Louis becomes aware that I have you. He will not care. Clara interjected rapidly. The feelings that I have for him are not reciprocated. Oh, do not give me that. Walter was not about to have the wool pulled over his eyes. I am not going to be fooled. I went to see him, she told him desperately. I begged him to leave with me so that we could both be safe. But he told me to go alone. At least some of what she was telling him was true. She hoped that made her seem more believable. He told me that he would never want a common little whore like me. Maybe if she appealed to the protective side of him, the part of him that wanted to save his daughter's heart from Louis, she could actually get out of this. He broke my heart, and now I just want to be alone. I want to get away from here so that I can recover. Walter's face froze for a second. Clara allowed herself to get a little bit of hope that maybe he was about to be thawed. But then the madness slid behind his eyes again and she knew that it was hopeless. I am going to be honest with you, Clara. He stood up as he spoke. You left me very little time to come up with a plan. As soon as you started making your move to leave, I had to take action. Clara did not get a chance to ask Walter how he knew so much about her. It made sense that a man of such power would have eyes all over the city. I have got you now. It is time for me to work out what I am going to do with you. As he tapped his lip, Clara took the chance to put across one last argument as an attempt to save herself. For now, she felt safe in the knowledge that he was not about to do anything. But the more that time passed, the more desperate things would become. If she left it too long, there was a chance that she would not get out at all. Do nothing, she declared without any fear in her tone. You do not have to do this at all. You must see how mad all of this is. This is no longer about Elizabeth, this is about you. You are and your need for revenge against anyone who you think has wronged you. I know that I let you down by not following through with what you wanted. But it was not a personal attack. It was my weakness, not a betrayal of you. She tugged at her arms, indicating the way that he had her tied up. It is not too late to put an end to this. You can let me go, take me to the train station and I will go. Just as I was going to go before. I have no desire to take you down. I just want to leave. As if I can trust you. Walter yelled angrily. You are a silly little tramp who was willing to betray a man you did not even know for money. You are going to blame me for something that you suggested? Clara could hardly believe how insulting that was. The whole thing was Walter's plan. She had only gone along with it out of desperation. I cannot believe that you are throwing that back in my face. Walter got right up in her face and he gave her a terrible, evil look. I can do whatever I want. He spat at her. You forget who I am compared to who you are. I know. Clara recognized that she needed to pander to Walter's ego. That was obviously a huge part of him. And she did not mind a bit of stroking that if it got her out of this hell. I know who you are. I understand what you can do. You are one of the most powerful men in the city. If not the most powerful man. That is why you should not be messing around with me. I am nothing to you. Just a silly blip in an otherwise perfect life. Let me get out of here and we can both forget this ever happened. And let Louis go free? I think not. Does Elizabeth even want all of this? Clara asked exasperatedly. Is she keen for you to risk so much for some idiot who broke her heart? Maybe she does not even care anymore. And it is just you who is carrying this on. Walter did not even want to entertain Clara's notions. He did not want to listen to any of them. She needed to remember that he was the one in control here. He was the one who had the freedom to move around his own home while she was trapped. Tied up in his office. Maybe he was not sure what he wanted to do with her, but he felt certain that a night sleeping on it would help him figure that much out. "You will shut up," he growled at her. "Unless you want me to ensure that you cannot open your mouth." Clara shook her head rapidly. It was terrifying enough to find herself in the situation that she was in. She did not want to make it worse. "Right, then I will be back when I feel it is appropriate. Do not alert anyone else in the house to your existence. Understand?" "I understand." Clara was not sure that she would stick to that, but it seemed safest to agree now. "Whatever it is you need me to do." Once the door closed behind him, Clara let out a deep breath of terrified relief. She was still scared, but it was better without him here. Maybe if she had known how insane he was, Clara would have found a way to comply with him, without wrecking everything. She certainly would not have gone down the path that she had. Anyway, there was no point in worrying about that now. She needed to try and see if she could escape. She needed to spend this time wisely, and she had to get out of here if she could. One way or another. Chapter 12. Clara's back stiffened as she heard the awfully familiar sound of the key turning in the lock on Walter's office door. Even though he still had not come up with a plan for her, the time was obviously looming. They were both very aware that he could not keep her locked away forever, and the longer she remained in his office, the fewer the possibilities of what could come next became. If only someone was out looking for Clara. If only she had not just told her friend that she was going forever. There was not a single person who would think that she was still in London, which left her chance at being rescued very minimal. Even if Clara was not afraid of what was to come next, she would still hate the sound of him entering the room. His visits were always erratic and unpleasant, no matter what his mood was. Sometimes he would be angry, and he would rant at her for hours. Sometimes he would be pensive, and his thoughts would spew out of his mouth like a never-ending stream of nonsense. Sometimes he would be in a good mood and he would feed her with a spoon. Those times were the most sickening of all. Clara half feared that Walter would eventually become dependent on her, and he would keep her there for the rest of her days. A prison sentence that jumped straight from a nightmare. Just keep breathing, she reminded herself as the door slowly creaked open. I have survived this far. I can survive a little more. But it was not his dark eyes staring back at her this time as Clara looked up. It was not his furious expression that she stared right into. It was the innocent, sweet face of a young girl. In reality, she was probably not too much younger than Clara. But because of her very sheltered existence, she appeared to have much more youth on her side. This was someone new, and after a week in captivity, Clara did not know what to do with this information. All the rules she had just given herself about remembering to breathe simply flew out the window as her lungs closed shut. Everything was about to change, and that did not necessarily mean for the better. As the girl's lips parted, Clara waited for the scream to follow. If that happened, there was a very strong chance that this would be her last day on Earth. Who are you?" the girl asked her instead, using a soft, careful tone of voice. "What are you doing here? Are you tied up?" A relieved tear flew down Clara's face. This did not necessarily mean that she was saved, but it felt so wonderful to have someone speak to her in a way that did not immediately fill her with terror. "I am Clara," she replied in the same hushed volume. "Lord Irving has brought me here and kept me his prisoner. I have been here for days now." "What?" the girl gasped and clapped her hands to her mouth. "Are you serious? My father has done this?" Father? That could only mean that this was Elizabeth. The very same girl who had set all of the events into motion. With her pale, almost white hair, and her wide greenish eyes, she was an extremely pretty girl. Walter was right about any man being lucky to have her. But Clara could also see why she was not right for Louis. She could not imagine there being any connection or chemistry between the two of them at all. Certainly not like she shared with him. Why would my father do such a thing? Clara hoped that by telling the truth she would get this girl on her side, rather than pushing her away. This was her one shot at survival. She did not think she would ever get it again. And she didn't want to wreck it. Your father hired me to help him get revenge on Lord Bennett. Louis? Elizabeth screwed up her nose in confusion. Why ever would he want to do that? Clara forced herself to sit up a little straighter. She felt a little woozy and out of it after the last few days. And she wanted to do everything that she could to make herself appear sane. Because Louis did not wish to marry you. And that broke your heart. Elizabeth snorted with mirth at the idea of her heart being broken. Oh dear, he does not really think that. Does he? Clara was stunned by the coldness of her reaction. She expected to find a frail girl who did not understand the world just yet. Yes. I was a little upset at the time. But I was young. I did not see what Louis did. We were never meant to be. So, you are not devastated? Clara's blood had run icy at the idea that this had all been for nothing. Why would your father continue on with the revenge plot that you seemingly do not want? If I had known about it, I would have put a stop to it immediately. My father has never liked losing. I am sure this is more about that than anything else. Elizabeth gave Clara a knowing look. I can only assume that is why you are here? The plot involving you did not go as he would have liked? Yes. That is right. Clara hung her head in shame. The more she thought about all of this, and she had been given the gift of a lot of thinking time recently, the more she hated herself for even entertaining the idea. She knew that Elizabeth would think less of her for doing so, too. I have not had the easiest life. Not that I am using that as an excuse. And so the idea of a lot of money appealed to me. How much? At first, £100. Then, 500. Wow. Elizabeth felt truly shocked by that. It is strange to know that my father thinks I am worth so much of his fortune. To me, that is more money than I could even begin to dream of. I have been working on the streets ever since I set foot in London. This is why your father wanted me to ruin Louis' reputation. Oh, for goodness sake. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and made her way over to Clara. I do not know why he has gone this far for the reputation of a man that I do not even care about. He is not a person that I have even thought about for a very long time. As Elizabeth worked to untie the knots on Clara's arms, she gulped down noisily. This was exactly what she wanted. But she did not want it to be at the cost of someone else. Are you sure about? Her sentence trailed off as all of the happiness drained from the room. Neither of the girls needed to look up to know that Walter was in it. His aura filled every corner of the room in its blackness. What is going on here? His voice thundered through the room and reverberated off the walls. Clara felt it bolting down her spine. Elizabeth, why are you sneaking into my office? I hardly think that matters. Does it? She sneered in reply. Elizabeth knew well that she was the only one who could speak to her father like that. Which also made her the only person in the world who could solve this bizarre situation. I came in here to sneak some coins. I have been doing it for years. I never wanted to tell you. But now since you have a much bigger secret, I do not see why not. Coins? Walter was totally blown away by this. Yes. You often leave small coins lying around that you do not even notice gone. So I take them. I have quite a collection. She threw her hands on her hips defiantly. It started when I was a young girl and I held on to dreams of traveling the world. But more recently I have come to think of it as my safety net in case you do not approve of the man I wish to marry. What are you talking about? Walter dismissed Elizabeth quickly. "I will be choosing the man that you marry." "You will not," Elizabeth insisted. "Because I have found love." "As if love has anything to do with it." Walter could not believe what he was hearing. After all he had done for his daughter, after all the years he had spent thinking that he knew her well, it was all being shattered in a heartbeat. "Do not be so childish, Elizabeth. Who is this man anyway?" "Not anyone you will know," she replied with a wistful look in her eyes. Clara could see herself mirrored in that expression whenever she thought of Louis. "He is not a very wealthy man. His father does not run in your circles. He is well off enough, but it will not suit you." She gave her father a hard stare. "I have fallen in love with him and I wish to marry him. I hold no ill will to Lord Bennett, and I cannot believe that you concocted a revenge plan for him." "You told her?" Walter sneered at Clara in an accusatory tone. "She had no choice. Did she?" Elizabeth interceded, much to Clara's relief. "I found her in here," she had to explain. "Quite frankly, father, it makes me shocked at the man you have become. I am now very glad that I have found my own husband because I do not believe that I can trust your decisions anymore." Elizabeth held out her hand to Clara, who took it willingly and allowed herself to be pulled into a standing position. Her legs felt wobbly as they had not been used for a while, but Clara refused to fall down again. You cannot take her." Walter tried to insist, but his voice had grown weak from shock. "She cannot be allowed out into the world. I will end up in serious trouble." "Which you deserve," Elizabeth shot back. "But I am sure after all the trauma you have put her through she simply wants to get away. Do you not?" Clara nodded. "I was on my way to the train station when I was caught. I want to leave London anyway." "Well, there you go then. I am going to take our carriage to the train station. I am going to pay for Clara's rail fare, and I will send her on her way. That will be the end of this matter, father. I do not wish to hear about you involved with Lord Bennett's life again. When I return, we shall discuss my wedding to the man that I actually want to marry. Do you understand?" It had to be shock. Clara could not put it down to anything else. The man who had once inspired so much fear into her was now as submissive as a pet dog. For Elizabeth, he would do anything. It was just a shame that he had gone too far this time. "Come on." Elizabeth tugged on Clara's hands. "Let me get you washed up, dressed in something cleaner, and we will get you on your way." "Thank you," Clara whispered. "That sounds perfect." Elizabeth might have been confident on the outside, but her insides trembled. Not from fear for her life, but for her father. Maybe he was not perfect, but he was always strong. She could always see him as her rock. Now it was clear he was falling apart, just as she was about to leave him to begin her new life with John. Mind you, she was not about to give that up, no matter what happened. She had found true love and she could not wait to officially be his. Her father. She would just have to find some way to get him back on the straight and narrow. Somehow. Chapter 13. The carriage ride to the train station felt much longer than Clara was expecting. But that was probably because her eyes kept sliding shut however hard she tried to keep them open. Being kidnapped and locked in the office of someone who was teetering into madness was more exhausting than Clara felt possible. "You may sleep if you wish?" Elizabeth asked her. She had kept her promise and escorted Clara on her journey even though she really did not have to. It made her more angelic in Clara's eyes than she was before. "I shall wake you up when we arrive." "Oh no, I shall have plenty of time to sleep on the train." Clara shifted her body so she was sitting straighter in an attempt to keep herself awake. "I am truly grateful for this. I hope you know that." I am just sorry that you had to suffer all that you did. I wish none of this had happened." When Clara did not answer her, Elizabeth narrowed her eyes. "But you do not feel that way, do you? I can see it in your face. I wonder why that is." She tapped her lips as she thought, looking more like her father than Clara had noticed before. "Ah, of course. The reason that my father's plan involving Lord Bennett did not work out. We never quite got to the bottom of that, did we?" Clara's face turned a bright shade of red, telling Elizabeth all that she needed to know. "And that is because you fell for Lord Bennett?" "Yes," Clara whispered. "I was foolish and I fell for him." "Oh no, not foolish. I understand why. He is a very good-looking man. Just not one that I could fall in love with." "Does he?" "No." "He does." Clara nodded as she spoke. "He did not at the ball when I could have destroyed his reputation. Instead of kissing him, I ran away. Then your father upped the stakes and I tried again." Clara could feel her eyes grow misty as she recalled the happy times of this mess. The parts of it that she hoped she could take with her as she moved on to what would hopefully be a better life. "That time we did kiss. But there was no one around to see. That was when I realized how deeply I had fallen. It would be so romantic." Elizabeth mused. "If not so tragic." "Your father then threatened me and Louis," Clara continued, refusing to remark on Elizabeth's heartbreaking comment. "So I went to tell him that he needed to be careful. I informed him of my true status as a courtesan. I confessed all about the revenge plot. And I told him to take care of himself. Louis was not pleased to learn the truth." She pulled the coins out of her pocket and showed them to Elizabeth. They were still a lot of money to Clara, even in front of this very wealthy lady. "He gave me some money and told me to get out of the city and never come back." "That sounds like someone who cares about you," Elizabeth noted. "He wanted to keep you safe." But Clara could recall his furious expression well. Much as she wanted to believe that it was a kind gesture, it was not. She could not have her hopes raised about something that would never come true again. "No. I think he just wanted me out of my life." "Let us find out." Elizabeth impulsively called out to the driver, insisting that he changes direction, much to Clara's horror. "Oh no, please. You do not have to do that. We have said our farewells. I do not wish to see him again, nor do I think he wishes to see me." "That is nonsense," Elizabeth replied dismissively. "You did not say your goodbyes at all. You were both under a lot of shock and stress. I feel certain that you both have more to say to one another." Much as that was true for her, she felt less convinced when it came to Louis. "Your father wants me out of the city now anyway. It would not do either of us well to anger him now." "Do not worry about my father," Elizabeth insisted with confidence. "I know he might seem like a difficult man to you. And it is true that he is very clearly going through a challenging time at the moment. But he will not get angry with me, and this is my decision. He told me that he did not know love before you were born." Clara decided to tell Elizabeth. Even though she did not have any happy memories of that awful man, it seemed a shame to have him shattered in his daughter's eyes when everything that he did was for her. All of this was done out of love. "I just hope that continues when he meets my John, because I intend to marry him no matter what." Her conviction played on Clara's mind and allowed her to sit back to let the carriage head towards Louis' home, even if the idea terrified her. Of all the things she was not sure about in life, her love for Louis was certain. It was powerful and all-consuming. She had never experienced anything like it before. Maybe it was a good idea for them to have a proper goodbye before she truly did leave town. For them to say all of the things that they did not get a chance to say before. In that way she could have closure before she moved on with her life. She would not always be wondering what if. I am sure your father will support any man you have chosen, given time," she said reassuringly. "You seem to be one of the smartest women that I have ever met. Not that I meet a lot of women in my line of work." Elizabeth chuckled at Clara's little joke, which pleased her. "And I truly hope you go on to have the happiest life possible. After all you have done to help me, you really do deserve it." "I have only done what anyone else would," Elizabeth insisted. "What happened to you was wrong. And it does not matter where any of our backgrounds lie. We all deserve to be treated with dignity." Clara was amazed by this one-of-a-kind girl. And getting to meet her was just another thing that she felt grateful for. She still wished that she had not gotten involved with Lord Irving. But all the wonderful people that she had met along the way almost made it worth it. Her eyes had been opened to more of the world. "We are here." Elizabeth finally shocked Clara from her thoughts by announcing. "Are you ready?" "No," Clara admitted. "And I do not think I ever will be." She stared out of the carriage window at the large home in front of her. So much had happened in and around that house. It was almost insane. "I am scared of another round of rejection." "Well, I will be here with you." Elizabeth gave her a reassuring smile. "I think it is time for me and Lord Bennett to have another discussion. It has been a very long time after all. He might not even be there. I did warn him that your father had revenge on his mind. Maybe he has gone into hiding." "I do not think he would do that." "Do you?" Elizabeth smiled brightly at Clara. "Louis seems to be a man who faces his problems head-on." "Yes," Clara agreed, albeit reluctantly. "I suppose you are right about that one." This was a man who was brave enough to turn down a marriage that had seemingly been set in stone by their parents. This was a man who decided he wanted to pick a wife of his own. And held a ball to help him with that. This was a man who told Clara to get away while she could. He would stay and fight for what he believed to be right, even if it led him into danger. "Come on, let us go." Elizabeth took charge of the situation and she stalked towards Louis' door with Clara trailing behind her, as if she were the younger one. The roles should have been reversed. Clara was well aware of that. But all she could really focus on was the sheer terror careering through her body. She did not ever expect to be here again. And she wasn't totally convinced that it was a good idea. Knock knock. The girls waited impatiently for the door to swing open. The butler was stunned to see the girl from the ball here again. And with the lady that his young lord was once supposed to marry. Maybe he was not paid to have an opinion on these things. But he was very aware of everything that happened in the Bennett household. This was a situation that he deemed very unusual indeed. "Can you get Louis?" Elizabeth commanded, abandoning any pretense of being polite. "Let him know that Elizabeth Irving and Clara." She turned to Clara, who looked too frozen to say anything. And Clara are here to speak with him?" The butler started to walk and Elizabeth followed him inside, refusing to wait for an invitation. Maybe the girl that Louis had known once was shy and submissive. But she had grown since then and her love for John had emboldened her a lot. There was a lot of her father's fierceness within her. It had just taken her some time to find it. Louis' expression was one of shock as he walked into the hallway to see Clara and Elizabeth together. When his butler gave him the announcement, he assumed that he was joking. These were two women that did not belong in the same room even before he learned about Clara's true identity. Yet here he was, looking at just that. "What is going on here?" he gasped. "What has happened?" "It is good to see you again, Louis," Elizabeth said smilingly. "Of course, I wish it were under much better circumstances. But that cannot be helped." "Elizabeth. What is this?" Louis continued to plead in shock. "Well, as I think you know now, my father has held a grudge about your refusal to marry me." As his eyes dipped downwards in shame, Elizabeth immediately felt the need to put a stop to that. No, it is not an emotion that I share. I know why you said no. We were never going to be right for one another. Now that I have found love, I can see that. You have found love? I am so pleased. I have. Elizabeth could not keep the smile off her face as she thought about John. I am finally truly happy. But since he is not a man of endless wealth, I kept it a secret from my father. I can now see that was a mistake. She glanced towards Clara, causing Louis to do the same. If I had known that he would get this poor lovely woman involved, I would have spoken to him sooner. Clara. Louis whispered as if he had no control over his words. I thought you were gone. I thought I would never see you again. He could scarcely believe that it was actually her looking back at him. It was almost like he was living in a dream. She was going. Elizabeth interceded. She could tell that Clara was speechless, and she wanted to know exactly how Louis felt before she made her next move. She had a feeling that Clara would not be coming to the train station with her, that this would be the start of a happy ever after. But she did not want to jump to any conclusions without being certain. Clara had already been through enough. But my father caught up with her along the way. Or he had someone else do it. I am not certain. Either way, he kidnapped her. Kidnapped? Louis' fists balled up by his side in shock. Are you serious? I should kill him. You leave my father to me. Elizabeth insisted. I will deal with him. I believe you two might have some talking to do. Or I can take Clara straight to the train station if that is what you both want. Louis looked at Clara. Clara looked at Louis. They seemed to share something in that moment. A sensation so strong that there was nothing that could get in their way. Everything that they had been through had been building up to this moment. And now they needed to finally have it out. Even if Clara thought that it was smarter to go straight to the train station, she had to have this conversation. No. They both replied at exactly the same time. Thank you. Just as I suspected. Elizabeth thought happily to herself. After everything, it still seems like me and Louis are going to get the happy lives we want. It is the perfect ending. So Louis, I can trust you to get Clara to the train station, if that is what she wants. Louis did not even look at Elizabeth. Now that he and Clara had finally properly acknowledged one another, he could not drag his eyes away from her. This was all that he had wanted for what felt like forever. Yes. You can trust me. Then I shall get going. Elizabeth backed away gleefully. She loved it when a plan came together. And she had to admit that this was one of her better ones. It has been good to be a part of this. Elizabeth was also glad that when she finally got home, she could fully embrace her love for John. Her father knew, and he would come to terms with it eventually. It was time for her to start her own love story, and she could not wait for it. Chapter 14. I came looking for you, Louis announced as soon as Elizabeth had gone. They had shared a long and grateful farewell with the woman who had saved Clara's life. But now he had to finally get the words of his chest that had been plaguing him for days before they exploded in his chest. I searched everywhere again, but I could not find you. I was leaving. Clara replied insistently. Just as you told me to. I was getting out of the city and never coming back. I never meant those words. Louis flung his arms around Clara and he held her close to his chest. She fell into his embrace. But she kept her walls high because she still was not sure how this conversation was going to end. I said them out of fear for you. I thought it was because of who I am. She muffled into his chest. As she inhaled, Clara was given a painful reminder of how good it felt to be next to Louis' masculine scent. I thought you did not want to know me because I am a courtesan and because of what I did. It did come as a shock, Louis admitted as he pulled back. I could not imagine the wonderful, mysterious Lady Clara on the streets of Piccadilly, working with men. He shuddered. But it was more from the fear of what her life must have been like than anything else. I thought it was best for us both if you left because we were in danger from a man who seemed to be dangerous. I will admit though that I also needed some space. But the space did not do me good. What do you mean? Clara asked, although she was not sure she truly wanted to know the answer. Louis clutched onto Clara's hands. As soon as you were gone, I realized how empty my life would be without you. I noticed that without you by my side, I would only be a shell of a person. The smile on his face was so bright. Louis thought that his cheeks might crack. I want to be with you, Clara. Even if you are not a lady. I want you to be my wife. For one blissful second, Clara allowed her imagination to run wild with her. She pictured herself and Louis living in his home as husband and wife. Being free enough to share their love wholly. Having children to complete their little family. But of course the picture would never look like that. It couldn't. Society would shun Louis for marrying a whore. His father would be furious at him and he would make him sacrifice his fortune and his title. Their children would live a life of shame. It just could never work. I cannot. She told him thickly through the emotion. I cannot be with you. That is not why I am here. Louis' heart shattered in his chest. All he could see was blackness as the girl of his dreams rejected him cruelly. You do not want me? He whispered. But I was so certain. I thought you said that you were in love with me. I am. Clara insisted as she stared deeply into his eyes. She wanted him to see how truly she meant that sentence as she spoke it aloud. I love you with everything that I am. Which is why I have to say no to you. But that makes no sense. A hot desperation was creeping through Louis' veins. He had not yet come to terms with the idea of seeing Clara again. And he certainly did not picture any reunion going like this. Clara clutched onto Louis' hands and she looked imploringly at him. To be with me. You will have to give up everything. You will have to sacrifice your title. Your fortune. Your home. Everything that your family has worked for. My family want me to be happy. Louis jumped in quickly. They will not make me give up anything. But society will. Clara had spent enough time with the upper classes now to know how rapidly they turned their back on people. You know that cannot be controlled. But I do not care about that. Louis shrugged. I seriously am not bothered. If I cared about what anyone else thought, then I would have married Elizabeth. In terms of the sort of woman that I should be with, she ticks all the boxes. She is perfect. But I do not want to be with someone who is perfect on paper. I want to be with someone who makes me feel as special as you do. Clara's hopes soared, despite her rationality telling her that she should not let that happen. Tell me then. Practically how will this work? The tears stung her eyes as she forced herself to reject Louis. She did not want to be saying all of this. But he needed to understand how challenging this would be. You marry me, with what you assume is your parents' blessing. Then what? No one wants anything to do with you anymore. Our children become pariahs. We struggle with everything in the future. All of that is simply based on the opinion of others. Do they really matter? Yes. Clara exploded. Of course they do. If we are to stay in London, then we should move. Louis declared with a grin. We should leave London. I will take my inheritance and we should move to the countryside. This is where you are headed anyway. Is it not? Well, yes. But why do you keep making excuses, Clara? Do you not want to be with me? Louis needed to be sure. He could not keep pushing if she did not want him ever. No matter what he did. Have you simply come to say goodbye? To let me know what happened to you before you leave? I want to be with you more than anything. I just do not want you to have to give everything up. I do not want you to resent me in the future because you have had to sacrifice who you are. Louis smiled blissfully. Clara wanted him. That was all he cared about. It will never feel like a sacrifice to me. I will never resent you for it. I respect my father. I have spent my entire life emulating him and trying to work out his way of life. But it has not made me happy. Now I can use that knowledge to start again. We can live on a farm. I grew up on a farm. Clara laughed at his enthusiasm. You will have to do more learning if that is what you want. You did? See, this plan is perfect. Only if your father allows you money. You do not worry about my father. You leave him to me. Louis could see that Clara's walls were finally coming down, which was perfect. He needed them to crash and burn so he could finally bring her to the place she wanted to be. The place where he already was. This will all work out. I can promise you this. You will have a happy life with me. I want to believe that. I really do. I am just afraid of all the things that could go wrong. Louis stepped closer to Clara, causing her breath to catch in her throat. She could feel everything crumbling around her, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. Of course, all that she wanted to do was jump into everything that Louis was offering her with both feet. But she could not turn off the fear. She could not turn off the images of things going horribly wrong, and her ending up even more heartbroken than she already was. Stop worrying, Clara. Louis whispered to her as he slid a stray strand of hair off her cheek. I know that there are things that could stand in our way. And I can see that you truly believe I am giving up things for you. But what you do not seem to get is how alive you make me. It feels as if I have been in a dream my entire life. Then you entered the picture and my eyes opened so wide. Colors filled my vision and now everything makes sense. He slid his arms around Clara's waist and tugged her closer to him. I love you, Clara. I have loved you since the very first moment I laid eyes on you at the ball. Clara could not resist any longer. He was saying all the things that she did not dare dream he would. He loved her, completely and truly. He loved her enough to leave London with her and to start a brand new life. Her heart thundered in her chest as he grew nearer to her. Of all the kisses that they had shared and almost shared, this one felt like the most dangerous one of all. This was the one that was not being controlled by an outside force. The one that could actually lead to a future. Despite all of that, her head and heart were no longer in conflict with one another. They both wanted exactly the same thing. To be with Louis. To have the life that he was offering her. And then his lips were on hers and nothing else mattered. She was consumed by him once more and it was the best feeling in the world. As Louis held her so tight that she could feel his racing heart in her chest, Clara knew that it was the right decision to be with him. It would not be the easy choice. Even if they left London, things would be challenging. But she did not mind life being hard if she got to be with the man that she loved. Her life was difficult anyway. At least this way she got to have a reward. She got to have him. So, we are going to do this then? Louis asked her with a satisfied smile. Are we going to give this a go? It looks like it. Does it not? Then you better come with me to meet my parents. They're keen to get to know you. You have already told them about me? Clara gasped in shock. Why on earth did you do that if you thought that you would never see me again? Because they wanted to know why I was so heartbroken. Clara clutched his hand tighter as she tried to imagine what the last week had been like for Louis. She was locked up. But he was trapped too in regret and his emotions. I told them the girl of my dreams had vanished. Do they know the truth about me? Panic coursed through Clara's veins. as she imagined the reaction of two wealthy people discovering that their precious only son had fallen in love with a street girl. Do they hate me? My mother knows the full truth. My father most of it. They are not terrible people, you do not need to worry. Of course, Clara could not turn off her fear that easily. So she gripped onto Louis with everything that she had. She held onto his hand as if it was the only thing holding her to the planet. And she half hid her body behind him. He might have envisioned this meeting going well. But Clara was not so sure. She had a feeling that there would be panic and upset all around. And that it would be just the start in the long list of problems that would face them from here on out. Still, it was the first step in the long journey that they would spend the rest of their lives on. Much as she did not want to face it, it was unavoidable. Better to get it over with. Then they could actually start their lives together. Epilogue. Clara rubbed her eyes hard as she finally awoke after what felt like a very long night of sleep. She had clearly been in her bed for a very long time. But she did not feel rested at all. It was always like that for her these days. Are you awake? Louis called through into the bedroom with a happy shrill sound to his voice. I have just got back from feeding all the animals. So there is nothing for you to worry about this morning. Good. Clara grunted as she forced her heavy body into a sitting position. I do not have the energy for it today. She rubbed her left hand over her swollen belly, admiring the appearance of the wedding ring and the baby growing in her stomach. It was not a position that Clara had ever expected herself to be in. Not when she was at the farm or when she lived in the city. But here she was. A wife and a mother to be. Well, you are growing a human, so you can be forgiven. Louis said smilingly as he sat next to Clara on the bed. He ran kisses over her mouth and cheek before rising to a standing position again. Now, I have a meeting in a moment with a potential new buyer. So I need to get myself smartened up. Clara chuckled as she watched her husband switch from farmer to businessman flawlessly. Somehow, despite all of the odds being stacked against him, he had found a way to combine his life in the city and his life in the country. He had found a way to make the best of all the world had to offer him. Clara did not understand all of it. Louis had gone from the student to the teacher. But she admired him greatly for it. You do know what today is, do you not? She asked him curiously as he dressed. Or have you forgotten already? The happiest day of my life? Louis replied with shock lacing his tone. How could I ever forget? On this day a year ago, you finally became my wife. It had been a small ceremony, with only his parents present, but that was all that they needed. Maybe Louis's mother and father were not happy to be denied the chance to throw a large wedding for their only son, as he took a true lady to be his wife. But they did not show it at all. They were simply happy that their son had finally found his place in the world. In all honesty, Louis' father, in particular, had spent a lot of time worrying that his boy was lost. Maybe it was not the ideal situation. It might not have been what they would have asked for. But it had all worked out in the end. Everyone was now very content with the way that things had worked out. I hope our baby is born today, Louis exclaimed gleefully. Without the horrifying prospect of childbirth ahead of him, he could only see the excitement in their baby being born. Then this will be the luckiest day ever for us. Plus, with Elizabeth and John coming to visit next week, it will be good for us to be a bit settled, Clara replied. It was a funny situation for them to be such good friends with Elizabeth now. But after all that she had done for them, neither Clara or Louis wanted her out of their lives. At times it was awkward, such as the moment at their wedding when they came face to face with Walter. But since he was doing much better by then, he chose to not acknowledge their existence, which suited them perfectly. Everyone wanted to forget the horrors that they had all been through, they just wanted to hold on to the good parts that had come from it. It will be good to see them again. It feels like it has been forever. And of course my parents will want to visit as soon as they can to meet their grandson. If we are having a boy, Clara interjected. I do not like the assumption that you know what gender our baby will. Clara stopped suddenly as a sharp pain filled her belly. Oh! She almost yelled. Oh my goodness! What is it? Louis instantly snapped into protector mode. Any thoughts of meetings and business raced out the window as he ran to his bride's side. Clara was not a fragile woman. She had more inner strength than anyone he knew. But he still liked to protect her wherever possible. What do you need? What can I do? It is nothing. Clara tried to stand. She did not want to make a big deal of the pain in case it was not anything to worry about. She knew how Louis was. And she did not like to trouble him. IMO. As it washed over her again. She knew that she wasn't. Yes, all right, maybe not. She panted breathlessly. I think it is the baby. I think your wish is coming true and our baby is about to be born. Louis felt an intense panic rising through his body. But he shoved it back down while he smiled at Clara. He needed to be her hero. He had to be calm for her. After all, it was her body about to be pushed to its limit, not his. He held her hand tight. Just like he did before they started the last leg of their journey when they went to tell his parents that they were going to get married. Here we go again, he said softly to her. Time to make our family grow. Clara nodded through the pain and she allowed the pools of Louis' eyes to calm her down. Yes, it is, and I cannot wait. Clara felt the whole world melt away as her baby daughter was passed into her arms. As the bundle of joy was given to her, there was a shining sensation inside of her that was not there before. She loved Louis, she did. But this was different. It was boundless. Unconditional. It had no depths. For the first time in her entire life, she could truly see things from Walter's point of view. With this girl in her arms, she knew that there was nothing she would not do for her baby. Not that she was planning on exacting some crazy revenge plan that culminated in a kidnapping. Oh my goodness, she is perfect. Louis cooed. I knew that she would be. You thought she was going to be a boy. Clara laughed. You were so insistent that we were having a son. Well, now I can see that was silly. There is no better feeling in the world than looking down at my daughter. She is just wonderful. He stroked her cheek with his eyes shining with love. She looks so much like you, Clara. It is great. What shall we call her? Clara thought of all the people that impacted on her life. All the people she wanted to honor with her baby's name. There was May. Rose. Elizabeth, of course. But there was also one other person whose name she had not uttered in a very long time. How about Olivia? She asked quietly. That is my mother's name. Louis was stunned. He could not believe that Clara had mentioned her mother. It was the one area of her life that she never opened up about. All he knew was that she had died in childbirth. Olivia, I love it. Clara stared up at Louis and gave him a blissful grin. I love you, Louis, she told him serenely. I am so happy that I am your wife and we have a child together. I love you too, he replied while kissing her on the lips. Even if you are no longer just Clara, now you are Lady Clara Bennett. Clara would never get used to that. But it hardly mattered who she was anymore. Finally, she was happy. And that was the most important thing in the world. At last, she had her happy ever after. The end.
If you like our channel, please subscribe and make sure to click on the bell icon, so that you won't miss any future audiobooks we'll upload for free each week on YouTube.